A lively group gathers around a kiosk, and amid their cheers, a young man requests some items from his assistant. The nervous girl passes him the order and expresses gratitude for his help. Together, they rejoice after selling all their stock and start figuring out their earnings. After subtracting their initial costs, they discover they've earned 1,600,000 yen. The little girl is astonished by Shiru's selling talent, likening him to a wizard, but Shiru feels shy and says she's overstating it. In a different moment, the story moves to present-day Japan. Shiru suddenly finds himself in a forest, staring at a portal leading to his bedroom. He sees a magical city behind him and his grandmother's altar room ahead. The young man recalls how he arrived at the house his grandmother bequeathed him. When he opened the closet near the altar, he stumbled upon a gateway to another realm. Shiru shuts the door, thinking it's a trick of his mind due to stress from his former toxic job. But when he reopens it, he's stunned to find it's real. His grandmother had hidden a mystery, and Shiru remembers she vanished 7 years earlier until officials pronounced her dead. As a kid, Shiru often questioned her about the secret, and she promised to explain when he was older. The old woman died before sharing it, but beside a picture, she left a letter with guidance. In the note, she says sorry for keeping it from him and admits she was a witch from a place called Rufaro. In short, she discloses that the closet linked to Rufaro, a land with magic and special abilities, along with fierce creatures and species beyond humans. The old witch left a ring that magically let him comprehend that world's language and told Shiru to read 2 books stashed behind the altar. He locates the ring in the books, but the text is unreadable at first. His grandmother's voice resounds in his head, prompting him to wear the ring, and thrilled, he finds he can now grasp the words. As he reads, a voice in his mind tells him that he has acquired the skill equivalent exchange. Shiru jumps, searching for someone nearby, but realizes he's by himself. Like in a video game, he gains another power, inventory, and ponders his next move. The young man wonders if he should venture out, then recalls his grandmother's advice that everything would make sense once he got there. He resolves to leave the following day after getting ready and offers a prayer for his grandmother. The next morning, Shiru embarks eagerly on his journey, and after a long trek, he reaches a city filled with warriors, caterals, and mages strolling around. Thrilled by the sights, he notices the walk has left him starving, and a skewer stall grabs his interest. Curious, Shiru asks what meat it is, and the seller says it's horned rabbit, priced at just 3 bronze coins. The young man apologizes, admitting he has no money, which annoys the vendor. Thinking of the skewer, his mouth waters for the tasty snack, and he recalls he has 4,200 yen left from convenience store change, and wishes he could use yen to buy the skewers. Right then, a glowing circle forms in his hand, and coins replace the yen he held. The young man is amazed and rushes to the stall, asking the vendor if the new coin is bronze, which the seller confirms. The vendor finds it odd but assumes Shiru's a traveler from afar. Shiru cheers for his equivalent exchange skill and buys 3 skewers. He eats them eagerly but feels let down since the flavor is plain. The young man starts experimenting, changing the coins back to yen. Realizing he can switch them anytime with his power, he decides he could become wealthy and keeps testing, converting bigger sums, and creating a silver coin. Back at the stall, he asks if he can pay with it, but the vendor says there's not enough change. Shiru reflects on what occurred and tallies his funds. He walks away, eager to check out the area until he finds the market, thrilled to chat with folks there, especially Shiru notices his modern clothes drawing stares as a shy little girl approaches him with flowers, nervously offering them. When he asks the price, she hesitates, growing more anxious and dropping her offer. He picks a yellow flower and pays her 3 bronze coins, surprising her, then says he'd like some information for that price and asks her name. The girl, Anna, introduces herself, and Shiru shares his name in return. From Anna, Shiru learns he's in Norik, a district of the Gillam Kingdom, where bronze coins equal 100 yen, silver coins match 10,000 yen, and gold coins are worth 1 million yen. The average monthly pay is 8 silver coins. Gold is rare, and even kids like Anna need government permission to sell. He buys more flowers from her, leaving her stunned, and she promises him it's fine. Anna tells him a single flower as decoration looks odd, thanking him warmly, while Shiru says his grandmother will love the blooms. Touched, she offers to lead him to the government office and eagerly shows the way. When they reach a big building, she points it out excitedly. Shiru gets nervous, asking if being a foreigner will cause trouble, but Anna assures him the people there are nice. Though hesitant, Shiru jumps when an old elf with a stern face questions him at the office, handing him a form to complete. She lists his options: street vendor for 10 bronze coins daily to carry goods, the the same fee to set up a stall or shop owner for 3 silver coins a day, with a minimum 10-day contract for the shop. Shiro picks the stall option. He submits the form, and the elf finds his name odd. He blurts out that the fee is cheap but regrets it, unsure of local costs. Her stern look softens as she agrees it's fair, thanks to the mayor's price rules, and wishes him luck. Shiro thanks her, then tells Anna he's shocked it worked out, thanking her too as he plans to head back to the market. Anna looks sad to say goodbye, timidly lowering her head, but when Shiro starts off the wrong way, she yells to correct him and points him right. At the market, she asks what he'll sell, and he begins confidently but admits he's clueless. Seeing him unsure, Anna grins and suggests adventurer gear. Following her idea, Shiro spots a sorceress, a warrior, and soldiers, and Anna explains monsters from the nearby forest draw them here. He imagines a tentacled beast attacking him, then considers her advice. She adds sadly that the monsters hurt her flower sales, but cheers up, glad he bought so many. Beaming, Anna says she's happy they met, embarrassing Shiro, and offers to show him the market. They check a lantern shop with a similar-looking owner, a sleeping bag stall with a cat-cloaked vendor, and a knife and rope shop with a bunny-costumed woman tying a man. Shiro marvels at the variety, and Anna proudly confirms it's quite a place. As Anna had promised, she gave a small tap to her chest, but it turned out to be too strong, causing her to cough from the surprise, which made the young man Shur worry about her. She then grabbed Shur's hand, showing him the shops nearby, and he gazed at her warmly, imagining how she'd one day be an amazing wife. While Anna chatted endlessly, Shiro drifted into daydreams about having a lovely wife and daughter soon. His thoughts were broken when Anna eagerly asked what he was going to sell. Shiro bent close to her and softly whispered the answer in her ear. The next day, after hearing Shur's response, Anna looked puzzled, not quite understanding what he meant. The scene shifted to morning, where Shiro stretched with excitement, getting ready to set up his goods. Anna popped up cheerfully to say hello, and when Shiro asked if she'd be selling flowers again, she nodded, explaining she'd risen early to gather them. Shiro praised her, saying the flowers were gorgeous and she'd sell plenty. Hearing this, Anna beamed with a big smile and shared that she was selling them to buy medicine for her mother. Full of energy, Anna said goodbye, and Shiro replied that he'd catch up with her later. She dashed off with her basket, offering flowers to people, but then she crashed into someone and tumbled down. Seeing this, Shur, with tears welling up, shouted encouragement to her, vowing to do his best too. Just then, his first customer approached, asking what he was selling. The customer looked puzzled by the box Shur handed over and wondered if it was some sort of handmade item. Shur explained it was a matchbox, containing a little stick that makes fire. The customer, an adventurer, was skeptical, saying he'd never heard of a tiny piece of wood creating flames. Shur then showed him by rubbing the match against the box, sparking a small fire. The adventurer watched closely, first confused, then yelled in amazement, totally stunned by what he saw, stirring up a fuss around them. Dropping to the ground, the adventurer asked in awe how Shiro did it. Holding the glowing match, Shiro shrugged casually in response. Unbothered by the adventurer's question, Shiro asked if he'd really never seen anything like it before. He warned he'd demonstrate just once more and started counting down. At the end, he lit another match, astonishing the adventurer again. A crowd formed, drawn by the adventurer's reaction, all shocked. Some thought it was sorcery, magic, or a mystical device, but none had witnessed anything like it. Shiro pitched his product, assuring them it was simple to use. Customers began trying the matches themselves, marveling at them, while Shiro grinned, pleased that his plan was working out. During a market trip with Anna, he'd noticed this world didn't know about matches, so he'd gone back to his own world to get some to sell. An old elf remarked he'd never seen such a thing in 250 years, and a lizard man eagerly agreed. The adventurer from before admitted it was incredible, since starting a fire with a rock with slow and magical tools were tricky. The adventurer explained that those tools were heavy to lug around, and without a witch's help, lighting a fire took ages. Shiro nodded smugly and launched into a speech, acting like a tech genius unveiling a groundbreaking gadget, declaring that people wouldn't face those hassles anymore because he brought freedom. In a dramatic moment, Shur, dressed like Steve Jobs, held up the tiny box as the crowd cheered wildly. He asked who wanted to buy, and someone quickly offered, but they were cut off. Suddenly, the adventurer, now serious, asked how much the matches cost. The crowd murmured, assuming they'd be pricey, but Shur was ready for this. He asked the adventurer what he thought the price might be. After a pause, the adventurer guessed 80 bronze coins. Shur smiled and began to weigh his choices, sell them as a fancy item for big profits per sale, or price them low to earn more from lots of buyers. With the first plan, he'd rake in cash from each individual sale. A small number of people could afford the product at first, but later many more could buy it, though his earnings might drop. Excitedly, he shares that every box contains 40 matches and offers a discount to celebrate his new business. He sets the price at 5 bronze coins per box, surprising everyone and sparking instant orders. Shiru cautions them to keep the matches dry since water ruins them. By the end, the young man sells to over 100 customers, leaving just one old man without a purchase because the stock runs out. He says sorry to the old man and promises him a spot in line tomorrow, but the old man, insulted, snaps that he's only 120 years old. Exhausted, Shiru lies down, amazed at the crowd and dreading even more tomorrow. Clouds gather as the young man wonders if he can keep up, spotting a flower hitting the ground and feeling he shouldn't give up. Then the focus shifts to Anna, who cheerfully picks up a fallen flower as she always does. With her usual energy, Anna keeps selling her flowers, calling out that they're affordable. Suddenly, someone yells her name, and she turns to see Shiru, shocked, asking about his shop. He explains he's already sold out and shut down for the day. Anna congratulates him, but when Shiru asks about her sales, she blushes, hides her flower basket, and shyly admits she's unsure. As she puzzles over why her flowers aren't moving, tears begin forming in her eyes. Concerned, Shiru checks if she's all right, and she brushes off her tears, insisting she's fine. She dashes off to sell more, but he grabs her arm to stop her. Confused, she looks at him with wet eyes as he pleads for her to hear him out. She yells, asking what he means, and he requests her help tomorrow. She questions if all is well, and Shiru reassures her, saying he needs her because she's truly capable, promising to pay her. Anna dips her head at the offer, then beams with joy, agreeing to help because she's excited to team up with Shiru. He thanks her, but she says it's unnecessary since she hasn't sold one flower. Clutching his hand, she insists she's the one grateful to him. Watching her warmly, he thinks her honest thanks means he must work hard. Shiru asks if they can meet tomorrow, and still holding his hand, she eagerly agrees. They part ways, and he glances around to ensure no one's watching. Seeing the coast clear, he opens a portal to his world, hiding it since he fears discovery. He notes the portal, linked to a closet, can open anywhere, but he worries about gossip. Stepping through, he reaches home and immediately checks his earnings. Using a special conversion, he turns his coins into yen, totaling 25,550 yen from the day's sales. Stunned, he compares it to his old job's pay, thinking if this keeps up, he'll never need to work again. He pictures playing video games and reading manga, but snaps back to reality, deciding to prep for tomorrow. The scene shifts to Shiru at a supermarket, hunting for matchboxes. He finds them and spots survival ones resistant to wind and water, amazed he didn't know about them. He grabs several, planning to sell them to adventurers for profit. The cashier finds it odd, wondering if he's unhinged. Laden with boxes, Shiru realizes he overlooked how tough it'd be to haul them home, then gets an idea about using his conversion ability. In a world where he can use another special skill, the young man takes his shopping to a quiet place and turns on his spatial storage. Right then, a rip in reality opens up, surprising Shiru, but he begins throwing the packages into it. When he finishes, he cheers because he now has his own pocket dimension. He remembers how he used to stuff everything into a backpack, and since his old job hurt his back, he knows he couldn't have carried all his purchases if he had to use a bag. Shiru is amazed when he discovers he can also see details about the items stored in a big magic circle. He wonders if his powers have any limits, and what his grandmother might be up to. Staring at his hands, he realizes he'll never need to carry anything again. He decides to sell matchboxes for 4 more days, and then figure out what else to sell. Raising his arm boldly, he declares that with these abilities, he'll become wealthy. Just then, a little girl points at him, telling her mother the odd man is talking to himself again. Her mother tells her off for pointing at strangers, and feeling shy, Shiru quiets down and heads home. The day starts with Anna in a modest brick house that looks plain. The little girl, Anna, says goodbye to her mother. There's a vase of flowers on the windowsill, and her mother lies in bed. The woman asks if Anna is taking the flowers with her, and with a happy face, the girl says no because she's going to help at Shiru's shop. Meanwhile, Shiru is at his grandmother's house in the real world, asking for her blessing before her altar. He steps through the portal, thrilled to begin the day. Anna walks through the city with a smile, and when Shiru catches up, he says hello and apologizes for being late. She says she just got there, but he pushes her to admit she waited a bit. She confesses that customers were already lining up. Only then does he notice several people around the shop. Anna turns to him, excited to start, but he says he still needs to prepare a few things. He sees so many people waiting to buy that they're blocking other stores, which he knows isn't good from his old job. Another shop owner talks to him about the crowd, and Shiro promises to sort it out. Looking closer, he realizes the man is the skewer stall vendor. The vendor reaches Shiro and says he's heard about the matchsticks, but didn't believe it was him. Seeing the line but no customers served, he asks if something's wrong. Shiro explains the issue with the other shops, and the merchant gets it. His companions suggest Shiro use their stall for free today since it's farther away. Shiro asks if that's okay, and the woman says it's fine because they're taking a break. Shiro thanks her, and Anna's eyes light up. He asks if the woman is the merchant's wife, but the man quickly says she's his sister. She winks at Shiro, who's stunned because they don't look alike. She's a stunning girl. Shiro and Anna head through a small map to the roasted meat shop. As soon as they get there, the duo hurries to set up the products. Shiro shows Anna about the sizes and items to sell, and she says she's got it but looks nervous. He checks if she's alright since she seems shaky, but they open the shop anyway. Outside, a big line waits, and they say sorry for the delay, announcing they'll start serving. Shiro asks priority ticket holders to come forward and gives Anna order-taking instructions. She gets flustered but follows his lead. Anna is shocked at how fast the boxes sell, with many still in line. Shiro calls the next customer while she watches in awe. Anna marvels at how amazing this is, wondering if this is the magic of selling. Soon, they have to close, and Shiro apologizes to customers because they're out of stock. Anna can't believe it. Shiro says it's thanks to her help and the skewer stall owners. He starts counting the coins they made and is floored, saying he expected 200,000 yen from yesterday's sales, but in 3 hours they've earned 1 million. A young man calculates that the 5 million yen he's carrying equals about 490,000 yen per hour, wondering if that's a millionaire's income. Deciding to leave to avoid trouble, he slings his backpack on, but its weight makes him stagger. He considers using his pocket dimension to carry it, though he hesitates since he doesn't want anyone to notice. Instead, he hands Anna a bag of coins as payment for her efforts. The little girl thanks him with excitement, and Shiro pats her head, suggesting she buy her mom a gift. He tells her she was a big help, but Anna insists she's the one grateful for the job at his shop. Shiro cuts her off, saying she doesn't need to thank him since she earned it through hard work, giving her a playful wink. Anna pouts, wanting to express more gratitude, which makes Shiro chuckle. Just then, her stomach rumbles loudly, leaving her red-faced. Opening a bag, Shiro notes they missed a break and invites her to share a meal with him. Shiro pulls sandwiches from the bag and Anna, her mouth watering, asks if it's bread. After tasting it, she's amazed, exclaiming how tasty it is with sparkling eyes as she eats happily. Shiro feels glad she enjoys it. While they eat, a tall, well-dressed young woman with long hair approaches, asking for a moment of his time. She mentions hearing rumors about matches and asks if Shiro was the seller. He confirms he was, but says everything's sold out. The woman, placing a hand on her chest, says she didn't come to buy, she came for him. Introducing herself as Sankara, the city's mayor, she surprises Shiro, who can't believe such a youthful, attractive woman holds that role, having pictured a tough, muscular figure instead. Stumbling over his words, he asks what she wants to talk about. Sankara, with Anna watching closely, thanks Shiro for bringing his merchant skills to the city and bows deeply. Shiro replies that he's the one who should thank her for letting him sell there, and she calls him humble. She notes most local merchants are difficult, leaving Shiro puzzled. Suddenly she says he could assist her, catching him off guard, though they begin chatting as Anna dozes off, dreaming of food. Sankara explains that the city's isolation makes merchants act like they're doing everyone a favor by showing up. They overcharge for their goods while local products sell cheaply, throwing the city's economy off balance. Wide-eyed, Shiro listens as she passionately shares her goal to fix this by creating a market. After her speech, she feels shy under his stunned gaze, then offers him a key, leaving him wondering what it's for. Shiro, baffled, wonders if it's the key to Sankara's house, dismissing the thought as unlikely. Surely she's not suggesting something romantic. Sankara winks, saying it is her house key, shocking him completely. When she asks what's wrong, he brushes it off, but Anna pipes up, claiming the mayor wants to live with Shiro. He's confused, and Anna doubles down, saying Sankara wants to marry him, making Sankara clench her teeth in embarrassment. She firmly denies it, insisting she's not single and desperate, regaining her composure. Returning to business, she starts to ask for a favor, but Shiro interrupts, asking if she's married. Blushing, she says no, then points to an empty house, explaining he can use the key to enter it starting tomorrow. She wants him to sell his goods from its first floor. Surprised, Shiro asks why, and as he suspected, Sankara says other merchants complained they couldn't compete with the long lines at his shop. He nods, understanding their struggle. Smiling confidently, Sankara offers to show him around, saying he doesn't need to decide immediately. They stroll through the city until they reach the house she offered, both falling silent, struck by the moment. While Anna joyfully dashes around celebrating the shop's opening, a woman wonders aloud if everything is truly fine. She mentions that she hopes they enjoy it and adds that she has one more question. As Anna steps closer and softly murmurs in his ear, she suggests that perhaps the mayor is curious if he knows someone with a red face. Shiro loudly declares he gets it and says he doesn't have a girlfriend, leaving the mayor flustered. She stammers that wasn't her intended question, and the young man chuckles, explaining he was only teasing. The mayor, Sankara, still red-faced, soon regains her composure and asks with a serious look why he chose to sell his goods in this town. She points out it's a small place with just 500 residents and notes with a hint of sadness that he could earn more elsewhere. Shiro agrees she has a point but says he enjoys it here despite only arriving 3 days ago. He appreciates how hard Anna worked to assist him with the shop and praises the mayor's kindness, even though he's just a newcomer. Touched by his words, the mayor's face glows with admiration as the young man shares his love for the city. He recalls the friendly people he's met in Minori, thinking that despite being from another world and unfamiliar with other towns, none could be as welcoming as this one. Sankara presses her hands to her chest, thanking Shiro emotionally for his kind words. Anna, surprised, tells Shiro he's made a girl cry, and he quickly apologizes, saying he didn't mean to. The mayor then offers her hand to him. She tells him he can call her Sankara, and as he shakes her hand, he says she can simply call him Shiro. Anna introduces herself too, and they all exchange handshakes. The mayor expresses her delight in meeting them. A chart appears showing Shiro's quick journey from a matchstick seller to a shop owner in just 3 days. He pictures his grandmother in heaven, grinning and flashing a peace sign. The next day, he signs a 1-month lease for the shop, and 5 days later, Shiro announces the stock is gone, surprising the customers. Now wearing a suit and tie, the young man reviews his notes, puzzled because he thought he'd sold enough to supply the entire city. Anna pops in to say she's done cleaning the shop, and Shiro suggests she rest upstairs. She offers to assist him more, but he insists she's done plenty already. Disappointed, the little girl watches as Shiro stretches in his chair and sets out snacks on a tray. When he turns to give them to Anna, he finds her asleep. As the little girl sleeps, she mumbles, mistaking Shiro for her father. He tries to correct her, but she asks for a hug, so he lifts Anna into his arms. She beams, happy her father is finally holding her, mentioning her mother does this too, before drifting back to sleep. Surprised, Shiro wonders if he's become a father figure and covers her with a blanket, assuring her she can ask him for anything. Still asleep, Anna smiles, and Shiro vows to do his best for her. On the 6th day of sales, Shiro gives Anna a break, but he's worn out, having forgotten how tough it is to work solo. Just then, the mayor enters, and he tells her he's out of stock again. She says it's no surprise for a seller like him, but Shiro explains the real issue. He's sold far more than the city's population could need. The mayor reveals she's heard rumors of people reselling his goods in other towns. Shiro considers limiting purchases per customer as Sankara, looking serious, says she came to ask a favor. Sensing the importance, he invites her upstairs. He asks about her request, but first she wonders if Shiro knows of the city's Adventurers Guild. He confirms it's called Silver Moon, surprising the mayor, who didn't expect him to know so much already. Shiro explains it's because he's been paying attention to the city. Many of Shiro's customers are adventurers, and the guild operates like an outsourcing company, taking requests from clients and passing them to freelance adventurers. The organization pays for completed missions, which often involve killing harmful monsters, gathering herbs and mushrooms for medicine and other tasks. Sankara mentions that since Shiro already knows, it's simpler to explain that Silver Moon is the city's only guild. She begins talking about the guild master, but Shiro interrupts, visibly upset. The guild master is the organization's leader, a highly authoritative figure. Shiro suddenly stands, asking if something happened to the guild master. After a pause, the mayor reveals that a flood left Shiro stunned. Sankara adds that the guild now lacks funds to pay adventurers, worrying they might leave the city. Shiro agrees, horrified that this would be a major issue. The mayor then shares that she has a plan, as she always does for tough situations. The mayor explains that the Adventurers Guild from the capital wants to open a branch in the city, but she's always declined to protect Silver Moon. Shiro suggests that given the circumstances, accepting the capital's offer might be the best choice. Sankara happily thanks him for his input. When Shiru glances at her, he notices her figure, then looks away, embarrassed, saying it's no big deal. The mayor notes that if she agrees to the request, the Capital's Guild will visit to decide on opening a branch. She asks Shiru to show them the matchboxes, and he says he's fine with it, asking what the issue is. Sankara remarks that she's never seen anything like them, even in the capital, and wonders where he got such an item. Shiru stumbles over his response, and she apologizes for prying. She suggests that if Shiru has a monopoly on the product, the guild's interest will grow. Shiru understands, saying he needs to grab the Capital Guild's attention to succeed. The mayor feels uneasy, but Shiru reassures her, promising to bring something that will impress even her. Sankara calls him kind and shyly promises to repay the favor. The next day, Anna is back at work and notices Shiru's concern, asking if he's okay. He focuses on finding something to catch the guild inspector's interest. Suddenly, he stands with determination and tells Anna he needs to visit Sankara's house. When he arrives, Sankara is stunned by Shiru's request. She asks if he's serious, and Shiru confirms he wants to become an adventurer, seeking permission to join them. Anna questions if he's serious about going on missions with adventurers. He says yes, explaining it's the only way to understand their needs. The mayor, keeping a serious tone, asks if Shiru knows the risks, as adventurers in that region only go to the forest. We see a glimpse of the eastern forest with a large, shadowy, wolf-like creature. Shiru acknowledges the danger but suggests he could be a herb-collecting adventurer, which Sankara agrees would be safer. She wants to introduce him to some adventurers but notes her strained relationship with the Silver Moon Guild. Sankara shares that the guild's substitute master visited her house the previous night, sneaking through the shadows. He desperately begged for money, crying and throwing himself on the floor. Shiru is shocked by such a bold request and asks how much the guild needs. Sankara holds up 10 fingers. Shiru guesses 10 coppers, but she shakes her head. He then asks if it's 10 silvers, but she denies it again. Shiru shouts in disbelief when he realizes it's 10 golds, equivalent to 10 million yen. Sankara scolds him for being loud and lowers her head, saying such a sum doesn't exist in their small town. Even a tenth of that amount might have been manageable, but it would soon be difficult to ask the guild for help after refusing their plea. The mayor looks troubled. Shiru stares at the inkstand on her desk and chooses to write a letter, passing it to Shiru with a caution not to hope for too much. Shiru travels to the Silver Moon Guild, and when he gets there, he feels anxious since it's his first visit. As he steps inside, he sees a big mess, and right away, an adventurer strikes him, sending him crashing to the floor. The warrior declares that Shiru is fresh meat there and must show respect to his elders. Shiru struggles to stand, explaining that he's a merchant, not an adventurer. Still, the adventurer keeps threatening him, saying that since Shiru's a rich merchant, he should value his punch. Shiru slips away, thinking this kind of thing shouldn't happen, and goes through a door. Once inside, he requests permission to enter but looks around and sees no one. Suddenly, he senses someone nearby, asks who's present, spots a counter, and hears soft crying. He walks over and mentions he has a letter from the mayor. The person doesn't respond until Shiru gently touches her shoulder, asking for permission and saying he needs to talk. A young girl with rabbit ears and a long ponytail spins around to face him, but she's shocked because she doesn't know Shiru and yells, asking who he is and how long he's been standing there. Shiru wonders if she belongs to the guild, but she keeps shouting, demanding to know why he touched her. Still yelling, she questions if Shiru has a crush on her or something. She warns him that with a single command, she, a girl from Silver Moon, could call 1,000 strong men. She then pictures herself as a leader directing a revolutionary army. Shiru pulls her back to reality, asking if anyone else is around. She insists that sometimes there are others, but stubbornly claims she alone could beat him. Flailing her arms, she boasts that her punch could shatter stones. Shiru gazes at her with a let-down look, thinking she'll be tough to handle. He cuts her off again, asking where the substitute master is and requesting she summon him. She admits she could call the substitute master, but then reveals she's the guild's substitute master, leaving Shiru stunned. The rabbit-eared girl, named Emil, recalls how she ended up as the new guild master. It happened because no one else remained except her. There was another girl, but after the old master ran off, she vanished too. Emil, totally drunk, slams a bottle down and confesses to Shiru that the two were secretly together. She rants that they didn't realize she figured it out, explaining it began with them sneaking kisses in hidden spots. Eventually, they openly displayed their romance in the master's room. She starts swearing, hoping they lose it all, get attacked, and end up as slaves. Emil adds that the former master stank like a mutt, and Shiru tries to comfort her, saying she did what she could. He asks if she's finished unloading her anger, and she calls him sweet for hearing her grumble for a full 5 hours. With a red face, she starts undoing her shirt to repay his kindness, but Shiru questions what she's up to. Quickly, Emil rebuttons her shirt. She then asks if he has a task to complete. Shiru gives her the mayor's letter, but when Emil hears who sent it, she unleashes a flood of insults. Shiru wonders if his grandmother's ring broke since he couldn't follow her words. He suggests she mix things up and clarifies the letter is from Miss Sankara, the mayor of Minor. Still, Emil keeps trashing the mayor, labeling her a stupid, heartless woman. She snatches the letter from Shiru's hands and declares that if it's from Sankara, it's best destroyed. She rips it up and tears it into bits. Shiru shouts in surprise as Emil states that stuff like cheating and betrayal is awful. Turning to him, she demands to know his connection to Sankara. She's mad because the mayor rejected Silver Moon and brought in another guild instead, which is why she views the mayor as utterly shameless. At that moment, Sankara sneezes back in her office. Emil gripes that even after begging at the mayor's feet, Sankara wouldn't spare her 10 gold coins. Sankara gets upset and calls Shiru mean, but Shiru tries to calm things down by explaining that it was a big amount of money and Sankara probably had other worries. Suddenly, the girl turns to Shiru, asking why he's defending the mayor so much and wonders if he has feelings for Sankara. Tearfully, she admits she still loves the mayor and sees her as her best friend. Shiru thinks it's wrong to insult someone, especially a close friend like that. Emil wipes her tears and says that without the money, the oldest dude suffered and she's unsure what to do next. The young man tells her that since she opened up about her feelings for the mayor, he'll let it slide that she tore up the letter. Shiru hands a handkerchief to Emil and mentions he has a favor to ask the guild. The girl gets up, fixes her hat, and asks what he needs. He explains he'd like to join an adventurer on a mission. Emil says she'll put in the request, though it's not something they've done before. The young man wonders if it's tough to arrange, and she assures him she'll figure it out. She says there's only one group that fits, made up of 4 skilled members, so it'll cost a lot. She tells him the group is called Azure Flash, picturing them around a campfire in the woods, a sorceress with long hair, a tall middle-aged cleric, a young warrior, and a cat girl. Shiru gets lost in his thoughts, thinking back to his time in this world since arriving. He recalls finding the portal in the wardrobe and the day he met Anna, along with everything that followed. Things moved fast until he started working at the shop the mayor gave him. The mystery of the Silver Moon Guild pops into his head again. Shiru remembers his surprising meeting with the substitute master in Nil with a blend of curiosity and embarrassment, but his thoughts get cut off when Anna pulls him back to the present. She looks worried and asks if he's truly planning to shut down the shop for a bit. Shiru nods and tells her it'll just be for 3 days, during which he intends to live like an adventurer. Anna listens closely and grins, showing she gets it and saying it makes her glad because she has her own personal issues to sort out. As she starts to walk away, Shiru spots something on her back, a small backpack. Concerned, Shiru asks if anything's wrong, but Anna reassures him with a soft smile, saying it's nothing, and before leaving, she tells him to stay safe. After they part ways, Shiru heads to the guild and pauses before the big wooden door. As he reaches to push it open, a familiar person surprises him. Emil suddenly shows up and announces she's been waiting for him, quickly telling him to step inside. Shiru hesitates, his mind filling with memories of the night before. His face turns red, and he looks away, clearly flustered. Noticing this, Emil blinks and asks why he seems afraid, but before he can answer, she promises she won't tease him. She then shifts the topic with a wave, introducing a team of silver rank adventurers, the guild's pride. As Shiru looks at the group, he spots a young adventurer on a nearby bench who seems curious about what's happening. Emil goes on, explaining that this team will join Shiru on his mission, which involves gathering special herbs. 2 girls in the group stare right at Shiru, and before Emil can name the leader, the young man who was sitting stands up with a big, excited smile. He greets Shiru, saying it's been a while since they last met. Shiru blinks a few times, puzzled, trying to place the boy's face, and then it clicks. This adventurer was the first to buy his matches. The boy introduces himself properly as Lyre, the group's leader, and then points to an older man in clerical robes named Roll. Roll steps forward with a warm smile, greeting Shiru and saying he hopes they'll get along well. Lyre chimes in with a key detail. Though Roll is a cleric, he's also a strong fighter who uses a mace as his main weapon. Despite his gentle nature, Lyre cautions that Roll shouldn't be angered. Next, he introduces a young girl with long hair, wearing a cloak and a big witch's hat, holding a staff. She's Neska, the group's sorceress. Lyre nudges her to speak, but with a blank face, Neska quietly says it's nice to meet Shiru. Lyre grins and explains that she's shy but skilled in magic. Though her spells take a little longer to cast, Right then, Nesca lifts her staff and lightly taps Liar on the head, muttering for him to stay out of her business. Liar grumbles, annoyed, saying he won't until she speeds up her casting, and Nesca rolls her eyes, replying she'll consider it. Before Liar can move on with introductions, something surprising happens. Someone flips through the air at the back of the room. The figure lands smoothly between Liar and Shiru with a nimble move and introduces herself energetically as Kila. Shiru looks at her with interest, his eyes pausing on her feline ears that twitched suddenly. Unable to hold back, he asks if she's from the cat race, and Liar's expression turns serious as he explains that many people, including some guild clients, dislike this race. Kila glances at Liar and says she finds that odd, while Shiru feels upset, wondering how anyone could dislike such an adorable race. Hearing this, Kila smiles and poses, saying his words made her blush. Liar continues, proudly noting that Kila is the group's scout, tasked with guiding them, spotting traps, and handling reconnaissance. Thrilled, Kila adds that she fights with a bow and dagger, and Shiru tells her that's impressive, making her beam with pride. Lei confidently declares he hasn't witnessed much yet, then gazes at her sternly and notes she's also the fastest at escaping. The cat waves her arms, insisting he didn't have to bring that up. The guild leader claps loudly and inquires if they're ready to leave, glancing at Shiru and asking if he's prepared. Shiru eagerly shouts that he's ready, and Liar enjoys the young man's lively voice, mentioning they're off to the eastern forest. Anna approaches a bar, pausing briefly before pushing the door open, when a man who'd been drinking rises to his feet. He stumbles toward her, recalling her from a past encounter, and reaches for the little girl's face, claiming it's as he promised, just as the door swings shut. Shiru observes the steady looks of his new teammates, the monk warrior Rolf, the sorceress Nesca, the scout Kila, and the bold leader Liar. Liar ponders the adventure ahead, wishing for a smooth journey. The group forms a single file on a slim forest trail, led by Kila, moving carefully and staying watchful. The young Shiru feels nervous, but Liar spots this and comforts him, promising they'll steer clear of monsters when they can. Shiru sighs in relief and expresses gratitude. As they walk, Liar grumbles that hunting for herbs is dull work. Kila points out she's already gathered some, but Rolf cautions that the specific herbs they need are scarce and tricky to locate. The monk elaborates that finding these herbs will finish their job, though he frets as Nesca warns dusk is nearing. Liar considers this and chooses to set up camp right there. Shiru blinks in surprise, asking if it's too soon to stop. The warrior grins and explains that resting whenever you can is a key rule for adventurers. Shiru, touched by this wisdom, tears up, thinking of how his former boss never shared such advice. Liar then directs everyone to ready the camp. Shiru and Kila gather sticks, while Rolf swings his axe to fell small trees. Liar sparks a fire with matches he purchased, telling Shiru they're incredibly handy. The cleric chimes in, thanking their sponsor for the supplies. Liar jokes he could get rich selling matches in the capital, and Rolf nods but warns the Merchant Association might cause problems if they hear. Liar chuckles, saying the cleric's foresight is usually dead on, leaving Shiru in awe of the prediction's precision. Nesca trudges over, grumbling about hunger, and Liar agrees, summoning everyone to eat after their long march. Shiru watches Nesca bite into some bread. He stares at the meal of tough bread and dried meat, wondering how even seasoned adventurers manage with such plain food. Kila glances at him, asking if he's eaten, then rips off a chunk of meat with her teeth and holds it out. Shiru politely refuses, thanking her, and says he brought his own supplies as he unzips his bag. Liar watches with interest, and Rolf's jaw drops when Shiru reveals the contents. The leader can't believe it's actual food, and the group stares in amazement at the stash. Shiru pulls out canned goods, instant noodles, and an assortment of cookies. Nesca gulps nervously, and Liar asks if Shiru plans to eat it all alone. The young man clarifies he brought enough for everyone. The team is stunned, but Shiru explains he's testing new items for his store and wants their feedback. They hesitate, then Liar decides these are free samples. The group cheers, diving in. Liar grabs ramen, Kila takes a rice cake, Rolf picks a bread roll, and Nesca snags a cookie. They're all thrilled by the flavors. Shiru observes as they savor the treats, noting their delight. Kila flops down, belly full, and Nesca hugs the candy, vowing to remember chocolate forever. Rolf grips a crucifix, tears streaming, calling it a holy blessing. They drift off to sleep peacefully, Nesca mumbling about chocolate in her dreams. Liar walks to Shiru, suggesting he rest too. Shiru admits he's not used to early nights, so Liar offers to chat. The young man gazes at him, intrigued. While gazing at his reflection in a teacup, Shiru observes that the adventurers skip sleeping bags, and Liar explains it's to stay agile if danger strikes. Liar tucks a blanket around the sorceress, noting that one wouldn't suffice in winter, though too many would weigh them down. He sighs, wishing he had a storage skill, and Shiru sputters on his tea at the mention. Curious, he asks about this spatial storage ability, and Liar shares it's a rare gift, held by just 1 in 100,000. Liar adds that an old dungeon holds a book with that skill, and Shiru conceals his shock, knowing he possesses it. He casually asks the warrior what such a find might fetch, and Liar, puzzled by the question, muses that if it could hold a carriage's worth, it'd buy a mansion. Shiru pales, nodding in agreement, while Liar admits it's beyond what he could ever earn. The merchant silently rejoices, planning to test his skills' limits later. Saying he's off to sleep, Shiru is startled when Liar senses danger and grabs his sword. Confused, Shiru asks what's happening, but Liar hushes him with a gesture. He rouses Keela and Ralph, instructing Shiru to wake the sorceress as the leader detects something nearing. Preparing them for a monster's attack, Liar hears the sorceress mumble about chocolate in her sleep, and Shiru shakes her, urging her to drop the candy dreams since it's urgent. Nesca stirs, blinking awake with her usual blank face, while Killa sniffs the air. Liar, noticing, asks if she picks up anything, and the scout grimaces, warning it's trouble since the wind hides the monster's scent. Ralph deduces it's a smart beast, and Liar urges Nesca to ready a spell despite her drowsiness. Before she can act, a loud crash cuts through, startling the warrior as he spins around. He shifts into a fighting stance, eyes widening at a massive killer bear lumbering toward them. Liar assesses it grimly, saying their silver-ranked team can't win against it, and Shiru shivers at its towering size. The leader suggests fleeing, but Ralph interrupts, noting escape is futile. Only Killa might slip away with her feline agility. Killa folds her arms, refusing to ditch her comrades, while the cleric insists a fight would be hopeless, and the scout squeaks in fear. Liar stays calm as the bear roars, readying to charge, and ponders their next move. Rolf gravely suggests someone must be bait, and Liar agrees as tension spikes. Shiru weighs it like a test, listing himself, the newbie, or the non-adventurer as options. Sighing, Shiru knows he'll be chosen, and when Liar grips his shoulder, he braces for an apology about being sacrificed. Instead, Liar shocks him, ordering him to escape with Nesca and Kilo while he and Rolf distract the beast. Stunned, Shiru hears Liar apologize to Rolf, but the cleric just grins, saying not to fret after their long journey. Shiru reels from their choice, and as he starts to speak, Nesca steps up, vowing to fight too. The warrior halts her, saying her slowness would hinder them, then teases he wants to impress her in his final moments. Liar smiles at the sorceress, asking her to stand back. She mutters he's a fool, looking down. He readies himself, asking Rolf for a healing spell if he survives the first hit, and the cleric nods, wishing him luck. Liar, with determination, explains that he'll set a trap, and when it springs, everyone needs to run immediately. Keela's eyes grow big as she cautions that something is sneaking up from behind. Liar hesitates to trust her, but when he peers into the shadowy forest, he realizes she's right. They're encircled by 2 fierce killer bears. The roars of the beasts fill the air. Nesca steps backward, and the leader yells for her and Keela to get ready to escape. Raoul backs him up, saying he and another will hold the line. Anna shakes and refuses, insisting there's no way out and they're doomed to perish. The monsters rush forward, trapping the group in a tight spot. Shiru's heart pounds, but then he recalls his grandmother's voice in his head, urging him never to lose hope even in dark times. He hurriedly digs through his backpack. Liar, surprised, asks what he's up to. The warrior orders him to flee, but Shiru stands firm, facing the killer bear with courage. He tosses something at the creature. The beast freezes instantly, its body stiffening mid-motion, as if caught by an unseen force, right before explosives go off. Fireworks burst into action, leaving the beast stunned, and the group stares in total amazement. Taking his chance, Shiru charges at the monster, yelling that the bear will wish it never crossed his path. Without pause, he pulls out a spray and blasts it straight into the animal's face. The numb bear falters before lunging. Stunned by the spray can's power, Liar steps closer and asks if it's some sort of magic. Shiru grins and says it's just a special tool, showing the can and explaining it releases a strong poison when opened. The merchant urges them to use this moment to escape, but Liar cuts in, asking if the poison hit the monster's eyes and nose. If so, they can't let this perfect shot slip away. The group catches on quick and prepares to act. After a fierce fight, they triumph over the monsters and cheer their success deep in the forest. Liar cautions that they now need to carve up the bear meat and finish off any threats lazily. Meanwhile, Shiru seizes the moment to poke fun at Liar, asking if he's smitten with Nesca. The warrior and sorcerers blush, flustered, and demand to know what Shiryu means. He reminds them of Liar's saying he wanted to impress a frightened girl. The group leader brushes it off, trying to drop the topic. Quietly, as they gather the meat and other valuable bear parts for the market, Ralph steps up to lead the monster dissection, giving jobs to the team to strip the skin, meat, and claws. Keela, intrigued, asks what they'll do with the bear's lower bits. The cleric replies that the testicles can be turned into medicine, then asks her to cut them, leaving Shiryu horrified by the sight. Liar walks over to Shiryu with a stern look, asking if he can bring up something serious. Liar presses Shiryu to ditch the herb-gathering task and head back to the city, pointing at the dead bear and saying the merchant would rather sell the materials before they spoil, since they're worth more than rare herbs. To Shiryu's shock, Liar claims half the spoils are his, arguing that without Shiryu's item, they'd all be gone. Holding the spray can, he guesses it must cost a fortune, but Shiryu calms him, saying the real value is that they're all still breathing. Shiryu's words warm Liar's heart, and he smiles, praising Shiryu's kindness. Meanwhile, Keela stops short, then suddenly leaps at Shiryu, shouting that he's amazing. Shiryu ducks the hug, and Keela tumbles headfirst into a bush as Nesca and the merchant look on. The sorceress chimes in, saying she too thinks Shiryu's a solid guy. Ralph adds that the world could use more merchants like him. Shiryu, red-faced, feels the praise pile up. Shiryu shifts the conversation and looks at Liar, explaining that he knows they need to head back to the city, offering to take the killer bear's materials with him. Liar chuckles, questioning Shiryu's strength, but before he can say more, Shiryu uses his spatial storage skill, ripping open a portal in reality. The group stands there, totally shocked, and Shiryu, noticing their faces, says sorry for not telling them about it sooner. Liar shakes off the surprise and tells him it's fine, since they owe him their lives anyway. As Shiryu gets ready to go, Liar stops him, pointing out that with his storage ability, they should keep going on the mission. Shiryu doesn't get a chance to argue and ends up dragged along for 2 more days of adventure before they finally make it back to the city. Anna greets them happily, thrilled to see Shiryu again. Liar, curious, asks if the girl is Shiryu's daughter, but Shiryu explains she's just his shop assistant. The warrior introduces himself nicely, and Shiryu gives Anna the shop key, telling her to wait there. After that, the group walks to the Silver Moon Guild to wrap up their mission, but when they step inside, they see Emil on the floor, crying. She pleads with the man for more time to get money. Shiryu, expecting an easy end to the job, is drawn in by what's happening. The man yells at Emil, saying she's been promising the same thing for months, and he won't let it slide this time after waiting so long. Shiryu turns to Liar and asks who the guy is, and Liar says it's Gerald, a materials merchant tied to the guild's old leader. The young man walks up to Gerald, introduces himself, and asks if they can talk so he can figure out what's going on. Gerald takes off his hat, greets him, and explains he lent the guild 10 gold coins. With the debt unpaid, he's claiming the building as security. He shows a contract from the Silver Moon Guild. Emil looks down as Gerald insists that without the money, he'll take the property, adding that it includes the land around it too. Gerald says the building and land together could cover his losses if sold, and he demands Emil bring the property deed right away. She refuses firmly, saying she won't do it no matter what. The man questions why she keeps holding on to her role when the guild has left her behind, suggesting it be smarter to let it go since there's no hope left. Emil lifts her head, her face serious, ready to explain herself. She tells them it's not only about duty, while Shiryu and Liar watch worried. Emil shares that as a half-breed shunned by most, the Silver Moon Guild was the first place she truly felt part of something bigger. She thinks back on her time there, the highs and lows, and says the good times outweighed the bad. With a gentle look, she states she won't let it go, no matter the cost, and Shiryu, seeing her resolve, starts to recall something too. Shiryu remembers 5 years back when his family met at his grandmother's house, 2 years after she vanished without a clue. He can't recall everything, but he remembers his mom saying she might sell the place since it didn't make sense to hold on to it. Hearing that, Shiryu dropped to his knees, begging her not to, because the house held all his memories of his grandmother. He felt ashamed for acting that way in front of everyone. All the relatives were stunned by his outburst, and now Shiryu steps up, ready to act, while Liar, shocked, asks what he's going to do. Gerald tells Emil that feelings don't change the fact a contract is binding, and she has to follow it. Emil, blank-faced, says she gets it and pulls the property deed from a drawer, about to hand it over. Before she can, Shiryu cuts in, asking if he could buy something from her right then and there. Gerald's eyes widen in shock as he holds up the killer bear's hide, instantly recognizing the rare material and realizing from its color that it comes from an even rarer species than he thought. The merchant eagerly asks Shai if he'd sell it, but the young man politely says no, explaining it's meant for the guild. Emil admits she doesn't have the cash to buy it, but Shiru tells her she can pay later whenever she's able, no rush. Lyre, touched by Shiru's kindness, decides to follow his lead and offers the same deal. The warrior mentions Emil can settle up later, and the girl, stammering but thrilled, gratefully accepts their generosity. Gerald then turns to Emil, pushing her to sell him the hide for 32 gold coins, but she frowns and refuses, insisting it's worth 36 coins. The merchant hesitates, weighing the price nervously, and after some haggling, the guild's debts are fully paid off. With the deal done, Emil ends up with 26 gold coins still in hand, and the bear's paws fetch an extra 2 coins, making it 28 coins total for the Silver Moon Guild. Gerald bids farewell, pleased with the outcome, saying he's eager for their next deal and reminding Emil she's got one final shot. She bows, thanking him for his help, but the group insists Shiru deserves her thanks since they were just doing their duty as adventurers. Soon after, Lyre brings up that they're still waiting for the mission to wrap up. Emil freezes, caught off guard, and turns to Shiru, asking if he's there for the mission too. He casually asks if he shouldn't be, and she tells him to go, claiming his part is done. Lee objects, pointing out the mission was to protect him, so he should stick around. Emil flaps her arms, insisting he's safe now and trying to shut down the topic fast, but the warrior presses her, asking if she's already spent the mission funds, leaving Emil stumbling over her words. Emil firmly denies misusing the money, but Lyre demands she pay up right then, and the group insists on 30 silver coins for their work. Shiru, curious about the amount, listens as Lyre explains they couldn't charge less for such a serious task. The young man says that's not the issue. He paid 100 silver coins and wonders if the extra 70 were a guild fee. They lock eyes, and Emil tries to slip away, but Lyre catches her and blocks her escape, demanding answers. The sorcerer conjures a glowing circle with her staff, threatening to torch the rabbit girl, while Killa stands annoyed with arms crossed. Even Ralph gives off a menacing vibe, and Lyre snaps his fingers, saying he can't let this slide. The group charges at the guild master, who bolts, frantically dodging their anger. Shiru breathes a sigh of relief, thinking how lucky he is that he didn't bring Anna, grateful to see Emil's true colors. Back at the shop, Anna greets Shiru while sweeping the stairs, her face lighting up as she asks how his adventurer life went. He says it was amazing and offers to tell her the story, which she eagerly agrees to hear. He recounts every detail, admitting it was a rough few days, but Anna gets excited, praising his bravery for taking on a killer bear. Flustered, Shiru clarifies it was really the Azure Flash group who beat the bear. He just pitched in a little. She insists he was key, saying they'd have lost without him. Then a loud knock interrupts, and someone shouts his name. Opening the door, he's met by Sankara, who instantly hugs him tight, pressing his face into her chest as she cries. The mayor asks if he's all right, having heard he faced a bear on the mission. As he struggles to breathe, Anna steps in, warning Sankara he's suffocating, prompting a flustered reaction. The mayor feels like his throat is being squeezed but quickly lets go of Shiru, letting him breathe again. He tells her to relax, explaining that the adventurers kept him safe, and Sankara sighs with relief when she hears this. Feeling calmer, she asks how the mission went, and if he found anything valuable while traveling with the Azure Flash. Shiru says yes, and adds that if the supplies arrive on schedule, everyone will be eager to check them out, as he plans to impress them with the new items. With a peaceful look, the mayor echoes his words. He tells Shiru he doesn't need to keep his true actions a secret anymore. Stepping closer, she quietly asks about his storage ability, wondering if it's not just a skill but a unique object. Shiru turns pale and tries to dodge the question, asking what she means, but Sankara smiles and says he can't fool her. She explains that while it's an uncommon talent, she's met others with it, which is how she figured it out. She goes on to say that from the moment she first saw him, she sensed something. Shiru, if she could tell something was different about him. Cornered, the young man admits she's correct. He asks if this was a woman's instinct, but the mayor says no, revealing she tricked him to test her hunch. She admits she didn't actually know anyone else with that ability. She just thought it was odd he had so many matches right from the beginning. Shiru takes a moment to think, then yells in surprise. Sankara laughs and pats his shoulder, noting that in business, people aren't always truthful. She advises him to guard his secrets better. The young man agrees he was sloppy and promises to pay closer attention moving forward, determined not to repeat the error. Sankara asks what new items he's planning to sell, and Anna chimes in, saying she's curious too. With a secretive air, Shiru reveals an item, leaving the mayor stunned that it's real. Soon after, Sankara leaves, and Shiro stretches, celebrating 3 straight days of successful business. Just then, Liar walks into the shop, saying hello and asking if things are going well. He checks on the shop's progress after the mission. Meska steps in behind him, giving the merchant a quiet, warm wave. The warrior compliments the shop's neatness, and Shiro says Anna deserves the credit for tidying everything up recently. He watches them for a bit and notices the sorceress shyly tugging at Liar's sleeve. From how they act, Shiro guesses they've started dating and feels glad for them, though a little jealous. Liar mentions he heard from M that an important person from an adventurer's guild is coming to the city. The merchant confirms this, and Liar says he hopes it's a trustworthy guild, piquing Shiro's curiosity. He asks the adventurer if some guilds are shady, and Liar says yes, explaining that even top guilds can have poor reputations. The warrior names Fang of the Venom Dragon and Devil's Trident, but says the Labyrinth Marauders are the worst. Meska nods, and Anna looks startled, recalling that this was the guild Sankara had brought up earlier. Everyone goes quiet for a moment, and Shiro asks if the mayor knew about the guild's bad name. Liar says she might not have, since even as an adventurer, it's hard to get that kind of news in a small town. Shiro thinks about how there are no phones or social networks here, so missing information must be normal. He wonders if the arriving guild will cause trouble and hopes things turn out okay, especially for Sankara's sake. Anna speaks up about the guild representative's delay, asking if he might be lost. She wonders if he's taking his time getting there. With a calm face, Shiro says he could be dawdling, though the route from the other city seems simple enough, yet might not be. Still, Sankara has been waiting at the city gate since yesterday. The child says it'd be nice if he showed up soon, and Shiro agrees. Suddenly, a bell chimes, signaling the afternoon's end. Shiro tells Anna they're finished for the day, and the girl nods. The young man bids farewell to his cheerful customer, holding the key and thinking it's still early, though he's decided to close the shop. Just as he's about to lock the door, he hears knocks and opens it to find a girl with long hair, dressed in a uniform, carrying 2 swords. Her serious gaze meets his, but her polite voice apologizes for being late and asks to see the item. Shaw invites her to look around freely and quickly opens a matchbox. The girl watches with interest, and he encourages her to try it herself, sparking a gleam of excitement in her eyes. Her face lights up as she exclaims she's heard rumors about this product and finds it incredible. Pointing to another package, she asks what it is, and Shiro explains it's a survival blanket that shields against cold, better than regular ones. He wraps her in it, recalling how adventurers and the mayor marveled at it initially. The girl smiles, amazed at how warm and cozy it feels despite its thinness, then points curiously to another item on display. Shiro tells her it's a collapsible water bottle and eagerly shows her more products while she listens closely. She thanks him for the explanations but says she must go, late for an appointment, before rushing out with a quick goodbye, leaving Shiro and Treat behind. Days later, Anna bursts into the shop, yelling for Shiro with a frantic look that stops the young man cold, making him ask what's wrong. Meanwhile, Sankara strolls through the city when an unfamiliar man steps up to her. The man asks Sankara if she's the mayor, his voice stern and his stance threatening. He reveals he's an inspector from the capital's Adventurers Guild, sending a shiver through Sankara as she senses trouble. Shiro and Anna hurried to the meeting spot, the young man expecting to meet this figure but surprised it's happening so soon. Sankara had planned to tour the city and market with him first, then visit Shiro's shop, but when they reach the spot, things take an unexpected turn. Shiro arrives to a startling sight, with Anna explaining they urgently need him. Inside the Silver Moon Guild, he finds Sankara unwell and the Azure Flash adventurers looking grim. A shadowy figure stands with his back to Shiro, who wonders if it's the inspector. Sankara whispers to him that the man's tough to handle and urges Shiro to stay calm, even if provoked, though Shiro notices her trembling despite her words. Trying to ease her, Shiro smiles, confident from past dealings with difficult people and determined to stand firm. Sankara, relieved, introduces Shiro to Gabis, the guild inspector from the capital, her voice steady but tense. She praises Shiro as the city's pride, and he greets Gabis alongside Anna, but the inspector scoffs, expecting a seasoned merchant. Gabis eyes Anna mockingly, calling her an inexperienced kid hired by Shiro. Anna shrinks back, frightened, while Shiro forces a smile to hide his irritation. Gabis surveys the Silver Moon Guild, grumbling that it's dirty and that demi-humans can't even clean properly. Thiel snaps back, furious, insisting she cleans daily in her spare time, but Gabis laughs scornfully, questioning her efforts. Sankara watches, barely containing her anger, as Gabis adds that demi-humans who can't work don't deserve to live, leaving Killa and Ale shaking with fury. The mayor steps in, shifting the conversation by offering to show the man Shiru's products. The man examines the matches and appears impressed for the first time, noting that at least this product is well made, which makes Sankara smile with hope. However, Gebis soon tosses the matchstick onto the floor carelessly and sits down, declaring his plan to start a Labyrinth Marauders branch in the city. Sankara is stunned, while Ale reprimands him for dropping the matchstick inside the guild, but Gebis simply brushes her off. The inspector then lays out his demands, stating that his guild will be the only one allowed in the city and all others must close immediately. He glares at Ale, asking if she has anything to say about her weak, tiny guild. The rabbit girl attempts to object, clarifying that its name is Silver Moon, but Gebis cuts her off rudely, saying the name is irrelevant since it should just shut down. Furious, Mill charges at him, though Sankara restrains her once more as the inspector goes on with his demands. He insists on a full tax exemption, claiming the small city offers no profit and he'll need funds to establish his new guild. Additionally, he demands exclusive rights to sell the matches, announcing that all of Shiru's stock now belongs to him. With a smug grin, the man throws some boxes onto the table, while Shiru looks at him, puzzled by his motives. Gebis leans closer to the young man, questioning if he's truly a merchant and mocking him as a fool, which angers the inspector further. Getting even nearer, he explains his intent to buy up all the match stock from the store. Sankara tries to step in, but he turns to her with a haughty expression, asking what she wants. The mayor insists she can't agree to exclusive sales, even for the city's benefit, but Gebis laughs at her innocence. He argues that NRI's remote location limits trade, but his guild could distribute products across the kingdom, his greedy smirk revealing his focus on profit alone, as Shiru watches. Shiru folds his arms and admits the offer is intriguing but says he's not interested. He points out there's a stock limit and refuses to sell everything to one guild. Sankara breathes a sigh of relief and states they can't allow the branch in the city. Gebis's face contorts with rage, and in a furious outburst he hurls a glass bottle at Sankara, narrowly missing her. He yells, demanding to know who they think he is, claiming the city's guild is already destined to collapse, while Liar's anger simmers as he observes. Shiru inhales deeply and steps in, asking everyone to pause. He highlights the nearby forest, monsters, and rare herbs, suggesting the city's location has value. He adds that adventurers use it as a base, but Gebis laughs mockingly at this. He grabs Shiru by the tie, calling him an idiot and saying the city's adventurers are pathetic with no potential, claiming they can't profit in big cities, which is why they're here. They've targeted areas with little competition, and Nesca grows furious, though Liar signals her to stay calm. Her aura strengthens, and everyone feels its heavy presence. Gebis keeps talking, calling the city's worth absurd, enraging the mayor and Mill. He pressures Shiru, asking what he'll do since a branch in Minich could help the city, placing its future in Shiru's hands. The young man requests time to consider, but Gebis snaps there's no time to waste. The inspector then grins wickedly and points at Anna, saying if Shiru agrees, he could replace the little girl with someone skilled. Shiru goes quiet for a moment, then icily asks what Gebis just said. Thinking he's won, Gebis repeats that he could swap out the worthless child and dirty demi-humans for proper workers. At that, Shiru's penned-up fury erupts, and he lands a solid punch on Gebis's face, knocking him back. Shiru stumbles back, yelling in anger, and immediately rushes at the man as everyone around watches in amazement. During the heated exchange, Shiru feels a familiar sensation, much like the time he left his job. Back then, a boss had been taunting a new worker who looked up to him until Shiru snapped. The words from Gebis echo those of his old boss who, in a rage, threw a strong punch at the inspector, sending him flying. The Azure Flash team looks on in shock while Emil stands nearby. Sankara, visibly shaken, walks up and Shiru questions if Gebis behaved oddly toward her. The mayor pauses, then sheepishly confesses that Gebis touched her wrongly. Shiru's face hardens with rage as he seizes Gebis by the hair. Sankara pleads with him to stop, insisting it's not worth it anymore, and the cleric Ralph steps in, calling out to Shiru. Shiru turns back, and though Ralph only offers assistance, Shiru takes it and keeps pulling the inspector along, recalling his actions from when he quit his job. With Ralph's help, Shiru hoists Gebis up and smashes him headfirst onto the guild's counter, causing the ground to tremble. Shiru stands tall, declaring he despises violence but won't tolerate anyone disrespecting his worker or exploiting the mayor. Sankara and Anna are touched, their eyes filling with tears. Shiru lands another kick on Gebis, stating he's too weak to stay quiet about this. Anna rushes over and embraces Shiru, crying. Gebis, furious, rises and yells that he'll take revenge on the city, bragging loudly. Gabus boasts he's the leader of the Labyrinth Marauders and threatens everyone, but Sankara stares at him icily, asking if he's ready to start a war with her city. The mayor adds that if it escalates, she'll report it to the territory's ruler, Marcus Basher. The inspector turns pale, stumbles over his words, and tries to retreat. He suggests that if they prioritize him in match sales, he'll forget the incident. Shiru yanks his ear hard, saying Gabus must be deaf since he's not listening. Shiru flat out refuses to sell and warns that any funny business will lead to the destruction of Gabus's guild. Sankara and the adventurer stand resolute as Shiru shouts, demanding if Gabus gets it. Gabus drops to his knees, pleading for a deal, but Shiru replies he'll be pickier about his business partners going forward. Gabus shifts gears, asking to discuss the guild's branch, but Sankara dismisses it with a shrug. Liar bursts into laughter, taunting Gabus that his greed left him empty-handed. The inspector snaps at Liar to be quiet, enraged, and hurls insults, calling him a feeble adventurer. Liar grabs Gabus by the collar, cautioning him to hush, but Shiru asks Liar to avoid violence. Liar points out Shiru hit Gabus too, then kicks Gabus, calling him useless. The warrior points toward the capital, and Gabus crawls off, fuming. Liar, Emil, and Ralph grumble they're not content with just that, but the mayor soothes them, suggesting they let it go. Sankara glances at Shiru for backup when sudden knocks at the door grab Liar's attention. He groans, assuming Gabus is back, but opens it to find a girl who once visited Shiru's shop. She requests entry, explaining she knew the mayor was there, which brought her over. Shiru knows her face, and Sankara introduces herself, asking the girl's identity. The girl reveals she's Mirage, a messenger from the guild fairies. Liar's eyes grow wide, noting this is a major name. Sankara questions Mirage about her visit's purpose. Mirage smiles, saying she wants to set up a guild branch in Nick, her face showing resolve as she asks for a favor. She stays composed while Sankara eyes her warily, wondering if this branch idea is genuine. Hidden behind Shiru, Emil warns Sankara it might be a trick, offering friendly caution. Mirage blinks briefly, then abruptly spins around, reaching out. Emil's hands trembled as she asked if the rabbit girl worked at the guild, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. The rabbit girl jumped in surprise, but before she could answer, Nay stepped in, saying she also wanted to talk to her. Nay explained that if the Silver Moon Guild merged with hers, Emil's pay would rise a lot. She stretched her arm high and promised a big salary boost. Emil followed the gesture with her gaze, her heart pounding and eyes widening. The rabbit girl, curious, asked if her pay would truly increase. Nay nodded right away, assuring her she'd earn 5 times more. With a bold grin, Nay showed she meant business. Emil flinched and stepped back at first, but soon knelt before Nay. She announced that the Silver Moon Guild would join Fair's Blessing as a branch, her voice shaking with feeling. Clutching Nay's legs, she pleaded with the mayor to approve her choice. Sankara stood frozen, stunned by what she heard. After a pause, the mayor decided to get Shiru's thoughts. The young man folded his arms and said they should at least listen to Nay's offer before making up their minds. Sankara nodded and welcomed them into her office for a talk, where they all sat with cups of tea. The mayor asked Nay why she made this choice. Nay shared that days earlier, adventurers had discovered a dungeon holding a strange map. This map revealed a continent no one had ever documented. She believed it might come from an old civilization, one advanced in magic, which could be a massive find. Her eyes gleamed as she spoke. Looking at Shiru and Sankara, Nay's face grew stern. She said the key detail was coming up. The map pointed to ancient sites in the forest east of the city, possibly lost kingdoms. She spread the map on the table and pressed her hands on it. Sankara, amazed, asked if this was real, her voice full of shock. Nay confirmed it firmly, adding that the Labyrinth Marauders were already eyeing the city to control the ruins alone. She grabbed a tiny figure from the table and tipped it over, showing how the Marauders had failed. They'd pushed to take over but got shut down by the inspector's harsh terms. Nay grinned and said her guild, unlike them, wanted to team up with the city for fair exploration. After careful thought, they saw this city as the perfect spot for their big plan, thanks to its location and one special detail. Shiru perked up, curious. Shiru asked what made the city stand out. Nay replied that the Silver Moon Guild, the only one around, was the main reason. By taking it in, they could turn it into a Fair's Blessing branch without building anew, speeding up the ruins project. Plus, Shiru's shop had impressed her. His goods were amazing and could boost their efforts. Smiling, she bowed and asked Shiru to think about setting up a shop branch in the guild. Her steady stare made Sankara swallow hard. Wary, the mayor asked what Nay wanted in return for starting the guild branch there, her tone sharp. The girl looked puzzled and shy as Shiru explained the trouble caused by Gabus. Nei's eyes flashed with anger at his demands. Shiro noted that even with approval for the branch, the inspector had insulted him. Sankara added that she'd faced harassment from Gebis too. He was awful. Shocked, Nei called it unacceptable but calmed Sankara, saying with Emel's agreement, they wouldn't need a new base. Still, they'd need a secure spot for an inn for adventurers. She promised fair pay and taxes that followed city rules. Sankara studied Nei closely, asked her name to be sure, then offered her hand with a slight smile, saying it'd be great to work together. Nei shook it warmly. With bright eyes shining with excitement, she thanked her for the trust and approval, and so the Silver Moon Guild, which had nearly gone bankrupt, joined the biggest guild in the country. A few days later, Shiro's shop stayed busy as always. One day, while helping a customer, he asked Anna to grab some large matches, but the girl didn't reply. She stood frozen, looking anxious. Shiro called her once more, but still got no response, so he walked over and spoke softly near her ear. Startled, the little girl jumped, turned to him, said sorry, and asked if he needed something. Shiro let out a small sigh and told her again that he needed the large matches. Anna hurried off to get them, but quickly lost focus again. The young man began counting coins and saw that her thoughts were somewhere else. He called her name once more, and noticing her delay, he asked if something was wrong. Anna bowed her head nervously, her little hands shaking, unsure if she should say anything. Suddenly, she dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face, her voice cracking as she admitted she needed money. Right then, a stack of coins clattered to the floor, and Shiro knelt down to take her hands. He held her hands gently and looked at her with calm relief, asking how much she needed. Anna faltered, starting to say sorry, explaining she didn't want to cause trouble. Shiro gave her a warm look, patted her head softly, and comforted her. He smiled and said it was okay, that she didn't need to feel bad because asking for help took real courage, which he admired. Then he asked if something was wrong with her mother. Anna froze, clearly upset, but before she could answer, Liar burst in, loudly calling Shiro to come eat. Liar stopped short when he saw the girl's face and said sorry for interrupting. Soon after, Sankara walked in, asking the young man to talk about the city's growth, but she paused when she saw what was happening and apologized too. Liar asked if they should come back later. Shiro turned to Anna and asked what she thought. The little girl wiped her tears, smiled, and said it was fine, that they could all stay. The young man looked at the group and decided they should sit together to hear her out and offer help. Liar tapped his chest confidently, saying they could handle it since Ralph was great with these things. Sankara stepped up too, as the mayor, telling Anna she could rely on her if there was any trouble. The little girl's eyes welled up with feeling. Shiro chimed in, saying he wanted to help too. Finally, through sobs, Anna began to talk, explaining that her mother was ill. At that moment, back at their house, her mother coughed hard, and the flowers Anna had picked began to droop. Anna's mind drifted to when she was 4, living happily in a small home. She could still picture the little house where she lived joyfully with her mother and father. She remembered eating meals together, always sitting by her favorite teddy bear. But one day, everything fell apart when war suddenly swept through their city. Their warm home burned to the ground, even her beloved toy turning to ashes. Her mother clutched her tightly, shielding her amid the ruins. Then her father appeared, carrying the little teddy bear, now battered and soiled. His face was heavy with sadness, the loss of all they owned crushing them. But for Anna, the worst pain was watching her father be taken as a soldier. He hugged her and her mother tightly, promising he'd come back soon, then left them alone. The war lasted just 6 months, but years went by, and Anna's father never returned. When she was 6, her mother said they had to move to a new city, but the stubborn girl didn't want to. She worried that if they left, her father wouldn't find them when he came back. Seeing her daughter's fear, her mother couldn't argue and just hugged her, crying. Anna didn't know what to say or do. Soon after, they left the city, traveling across borders, walking day and night until they reached Nick. The curious little girl asked her mother why they'd come there. Her mother answered that it was a place with no more war, a place where they could be safe. Living in a border city proved to be incredibly tough, and Anna didn't want to lose any more loved ones. Her mother labored tirelessly in the fields, often skipping her own meals so Anna wouldn't go hungry. As time passed, her mother's health deteriorated, her body growing weak and sickly. She frequently said sorry to Anna, which led the young girl to feel guilty for causing her mother so much strain. At night, Anna would hold her teddy bear tightly, sobbing by herself on the floor of her tiny room until she had no tears left to cry. Determined to change things, Anna decided she had to grow up fast. She set aside her toy, checked her reflection in the mirror, and set out to sell flowers with the little she had collected. Her efforts paid off enough to get a permit to sell in the city. Each morning, Anna would head out with her flower basket, returning only after dark. She kept going through the market until one day she met Shiru, whose presence instantly grabbed her attention when he purchased her flowers. Shiru not only bought her flowers but also helped her secure a job. Thanks to this, Anna could ease her mother's hardships, which brought her immense joy. She silently thanked the gods she believed in, offering a heartfelt prayer of thanks. When Anna earned her first wage of 10 silver coins, she knew right away how she'd use it. She rushed through the market and found an adventurer who'd once mentioned he had a potion to heal any illness. Without a second thought, Anna spent all her money to buy it. She handed the potion to her mother, saying it came from Shiru, the one who drank it. Anna was full of hope, but that soon turned to disappointment when the potion didn't help her mother at all, even after she finished it. Despair overwhelmed Anna, clouding her thoughts as she focused solely on saving her mother from the disease. She realized money was the key. Enough of it could get her mother to a place with real treatment. With this idea firm in her mind, Anna turned to Shiru, silently praying he'd help save her mother's life, even if he disliked her. Mustering all her bravery, she asked him for a loan, expecting him to judge her harshly. To her surprise, Shiru didn't belittle her. Instead, he gently patted her head. In that instant, Anna felt a warmth she hadn't known in ages after he listened closely to her story. Shiru took a slow breath, and with a kind gaze, said he grasped her situation. Anna bowed her head, her small frame shaking slightly as her sorrowful face showed the burden she carried. A brief quiet filled the room until Lyre suddenly smashed the wall beside him, cracking some bricks. His eyes blazed with rage, and his voice boomed with anger as he demanded to know who the awful person was that sold her the potion. Lyre tightened his fists and swung at the air, vowing that if he caught the culprit, they'd pay a heavy price for tricking an innocent child. He declared he'd hit them 100 times without stopping. But before he could go on, Nesca stepped in and whacked him on the head with her staff. She scolded him sternly, telling him not to break other people's property. Meanwhile, Ralph knelt down to Anna's level and spoke to her calmly but firmly. Ralph explained that, tough as it was to hear, the potion Anna gave her mother couldn't cure diseases. Confused, the little girl looked up and asked what he meant. The cleric then patiently clarified that healing potions only work on outer injuries, and cure potions handle poisons, but no potion exists to heal illnesses. Anna blinked several times, struggling to take it in, then protested with an innocent expression. The adventurer who sold Anna the potion had promised her mother would recover, but Ralph sighed, bowed his head, and apologized, admitting the adventurer had deceived her with a useless product. Anna slowly repeated the cleric's words, showing she grasped the truth, but soon her eyes filled with tears that rolled down her cheeks as the harsh reality sank in, while Ralph felt a pang in his chest watching her pain. Meanwhile, Lyre's anger flared up, and in his fury, he smashed the window, yelling that he'd track down the fraud and punish him, asking Ralph to handle things as Nesca and Keela joined him to catch the culprit, while the others went with Anna to check on her mother, Shiru trailing behind with a stern look. As they walked, Shiru thought about what Anna had said about the illness, and Sankara grew pensive too, recalling the pharmacist calling it a disease that ruined lives, deepening her sense of its severity. Shiru pulled Ralph aside quietly and asked about the illness, learning from Ralph that it slowly weakened the body, like the limbs were decaying, draining all strength, though scholars still couldn't figure out how it spread. Shiru shivered at this grim news, realizing the danger was worse than he'd thought, and after walking further, Anna pointed out a modest house, making Shiru marvel at how Anna left it daily to sell flowers on the outskirts for her mother's sake. As Anna took a deep breath to steady herself, she flung the door open with a bright smile, cheerfully announcing she was home, her voice warm and loving as she welcomed Shiru inside and proudly presented him to her mother, Stella, who, despite her frail state, sat up with a kind look to greet him. Stella thanked Shiru softly for looking after Anna, but he insisted he owed her thanks instead, just as Stella struggled to rise despite her condition. Though Stella apologized for her unkempt appearance, Anna and Shiru quickly urged her not to strain herself, stressing her health mattered more, even as she argued it was rude to stay in bed for guests, until Anna firmly told her to rest. Then Stella noticed Sankara, who explained she was the town's mayor, prompting Stella to look worried and ask why she'd come, to which Ralph replied they'd wanted to see Anna's situation firsthand after hearing about it. Stella sighed, sorry for troubling them, but Sankara countered that she was the one who felt sorry, frustrated as mayor for not aiding everyone in need, her face showing regret that Stella appreciated despite being an outsider. Stella then asked Anna when she'd befriended the mayor and why she kept it secret, and Anna beamed, saying she'd not only met Sankara, but also Shiru, Ralph, Lyre, Keela, and Nesca. amazing adventurers, adding with a wide grin that she was thrilled to have so many friends, warming Stella's heart as she saw her daughter's joy. Aya's heart felt warm watching her daughter's happiness, and she asked her mother if she eaten, suggesting she make soup for their guests. Stella responded that if cooking was needed, she'd do it herself, but Ima insisted, saying there was no meat since she loved cooking and wanted to handle it all. The girl then declared she'd go to the river for water, and Ralph offered to join her. Stella watched them for a moment before deciding to ask Sankara to step outside, as she needed a private talk. Once alone with Shiru, he gazed at her, waiting for her to speak. Stella hesitated briefly. Then with a serious and firm look, she admitted she had a favor to ask him. Looking straight into his eyes, she asked if he'd care for her daughter if something happened to her. Shiru was totally stunned by this sudden request and couldn't find words for a moment. Stella saw his shock and sighed, saying sorry for making such an abrupt and maybe selfish plea. She knew her time was running out, and she couldn't stop worrying about Anna's future, her eyes growing sad as she spoke. She asked if the little girl had already told him about the disease, and Shiru nodded yes. Then the mother softly asked if Anna cried when she talked about it, and he said yes, though Anna had been crying even before she started. Stella closed her eyes, breathing deeply, shaken as she'd long feared this. She understood how hard Anna had tried, even after she lost the ability to work and began depending on the girl to survive. It hurt her terribly to be a mother unable to help her own child, but the worst pain was seeing Anna force a smile just to keep her from worrying. Yet in recent days, Stella saw something new. Anna seemed truly happy while they chatted, which caught her attention. Unable to hold back her curiosity, she asked her daughter what made her so joyful. The girl answered excitedly, eyes shining, saying she now had a very kind big brother and was thrilled about it. At that moment, Stella felt a deep understanding, and looking at Shiru, she saw how much he looked like Anna's father. When she'd seen him enter earlier, she had a strange sense that the man who'd left had come back. Shiru felt his chest tighten and said sorry, noting he was there instead of Anna's real father and felt bad about it. Stella smiled weakly and told him not to apologize. That wasn't what she meant. She explained that his being there helped her recall her husband's face, which she'd started to forget, and that memory comforted her. Her eyes teared up, voice trembling, as she said this made her certain she'd find her husband soon when her time came. Shiru's eyes grew wide, and he asked what she meant by that. Stella sighed, her face peaceful, and said her condition meant her body wouldn't last much longer. She probably didn't have much time left. She struggled to stand, her look determined, and repeated her request to Shiru, asking him to please care for Anna when she was gone, since even though Anna was strong and brave, deep down she was still a crying little girl. Before she could finish, Stella suddenly lost her balance as her body weakened. Shiru moved quickly, stepping forward to catch her before she fell to the ground. For a moment they stared at each other, awkward from the sudden closeness, and he asked worriedly if she was okay. Stella, still a bit dazed, nodded with a small motion, and then Shiru helped her back onto the bed at that moment. Something grabbed his notice, prompting him to seek permission to briefly touch her foot, and the woman instantly turned red from the request, her cheeks heating up and her pulse quickening. Despite feeling shy, she shut her eyes and agreed reluctantly, puzzled by why he asked. Shiru watched carefully, and after a short time he confirmed his suspicion was correct. Stella opened her eyes looking puzzled and asked what he meant, then nervously and a bit clumsily inquired if he possibly liked her legs. Shiru stumbled over her words, his face flushing too, and he hurriedly said no, explaining it wasn't that at all. Actually, he was beginning to figure out what caused the disease of the ruined life and might even know how to fix it. Stella's eyes grew wide with shock, hardly believing what she heard, as she'd never thought a cure was possible until now. Tears soon streamed down her face, and she cried softly because, deep inside, she still didn't want to die or leave her young, innocent daughter alone in the world. Shiru gripped her hands tightly and comforted her, assuring her she wouldn't die and could keep living with Anna once he sorted things out. Just then, the bedroom door swung open, and Sankara stepped in, asking if they were done talking. Right behind her came Anna and Ralph, but when they saw what was happening, their eyes popped open in surprise. They witnessed Shiru clasping Stella's hands with a resolute look, leaving Sankara and Ralph speechless, staring at the young man, unsure what to make of it. Meanwhile, Shiru froze, his mind racing with panic, wondering how he'd explain this mess. Clearing it up was no easy feat. Sankara gave off a frightening vibe, while Ralph gripped his weapons, ready for trouble. Confused, Anna asked her mom what was happening, and Stella, still drying her tears, filled them in. Shiru felt a huge wave of relief when he realized Stella had smoothed things over, imagining the disaster if she'd stayed quiet. He coughed to steady himself, gathering his thoughts, then shared that in his homeland, the disease of a ruined life was known as barberry. Everyone was taken aback by the name, and he went on, explaining that it stemmed from a shortage of vital vitamins in the body. In severe cases, this lack caused numbness in the arms and legs, stopping movement, but the fix was amazingly straightforward: just restore the missing vitamins. Anna lit up at this news and asked if there was a drug to heal her mom. Shiro grinned and said yes, recalling his grandmother's advice to aid those in need. Determined, he used his alchemy skill, turned his money into yen, and went to buy the medicine. He returned later, holding a bottle of pills, telling Stella that despite its plain look, it could cure her. The mayor and cleric inspected the bottle with interest, never having seen such a thing. Stella paused, asking if the medicine cost a lot, but Shiro just smiled and told her not to fret since the price was covered by Anna's happiness. She tried to argue, but he stood firm, saying Anna had helped him tons when he first got to town. Now it was his chance to give back. He handed her the pill with a glass of water, and Stella took it, eyes wet with gratitude, swallowing it full of hope. A month later, the bell chimed to mark another day. Anna came home with Shiro, and when she opened the door, her mom greeted her. Seeing Stella standing, Anna's eyes widened, and she excitedly asked if her mom felt better. Stella smiled warmly and said even she was amazed because she felt so good. Anna dashed to Stella and asked if they could share a bed like they did before, and Stella instantly agreed, so from then on, the mother and daughter slept together every night. They wrapped their arms around each other, tears of joy rolling down their cheeks, while Anna sobbed heavily as Stella stroked her hair and said sorry for causing her so much fear, vowing they'd never part again. Shiro stood quietly nearby, feeling true delight as he watched the pair finally reunited. At that moment, Shiro reflected on his grandmother, picturing how proud she'd be if she could see him now, knowing he'd rescued someone. Later that evening, the young man stood on his balcony with a drink in hand, thinking back on the day's amazing events. Stella had fully recovered thanks to the vitamins, and Anna could now chat with her mom, cook meals, gather flowers, and play freely. Shiro noticed how the little girl appeared even stronger, her happiness spreading to everyone around. The Silver Moon Guild gained official status as a part of the blessing of the fairies, and with that, the Azure Flash group started assisting the main guild with forest missions. Shiro also pondered his earnings, realizing he'd made around 50 million yen in the past 2 months, and if he kept it up for a year, he might save enough to quit working. The thought of living quietly at home, free from jobs, thrilled him. Suddenly, Sankara popped up behind him, catching him off guard and nearly making him spill his drink. She grinned and said good night, while he, still shaken, grumbled that her scare almost stopped his heart. The mayor chuckled, said sorry, and asked what he was sipping. Shiro told her it was a drink from his homeland and offered her some, which she gladly took, leading them to talk lively as they sipped together. During their chat, the mayor wondered if she should pat Shiro's head, and before he could answer, she pulled him close, resting his head on her lap. He tried to object, but Sankara teased that he'd admitted he softens with praise, leaving him red-faced as he agreed. She told him to hush while she ran her fingers through his hair, and he asked if she had too much to drink. Sankara, with a warm voice, said she truly appreciated him coming to the city, and it wasn't about reward. She added that if he ever needed anything, he should just ask, but Shiro stood and said it wasn't needed since he'd only done what he could. Sankara looked at him and said she got it. He didn't seem greedy. Embarrassed, Shiro quickly argued she shouldn't see him as noble, admitting he loved money and was actually quite selfish while recalling his grandmother's lessons. Sankara smiled and said his grandmother must have been an amazing person, then asked her name. Shiro paused before saying it was Ariso Amo. Sankara echoed the name, but her eyes suddenly grew wide with realization. She grabbed Shiro's shoulders and shook him wildly, asking if he was the grandson of Arisu, the immortal witch. Shiro was stunned by her outburst and asked if she knew his grandmother. Sankara explained that everyone on the continent knew of the famous immortal witch, though few had met her, and she was one who had. Shiro felt puzzled, and Sankara shared that she'd seen Arisu at last year's harvest festival, where the witch appeared out of nowhere, drinking and dancing in the town square. Shiro found it hard to believe. 7 years had passed since Shiro's grandmother vanished, and just as he was about to protest, Sankara cut in, recalling how she vividly remembered the witch collecting star fragments to forge a magical sword named Mel Gibson. Shiro paused, overwhelmed by the flood of details, because the sword's name stirred a faint memory from his childhood. A poster of a well-known actor hung in his grandmother's home, and when he'd asked about it, she'd said he was her favorite, even giving the picture a kiss. Still reeling, Sankara admitted she struggled to believe Shiro's grandmother was that very witch, though it added up since he often arrived with mysterious medicines and strange objects. Curious, she asked if he'd already reunited with his grandmother, but Shiro shook his head, saying he hadn't seen her in years, then stepped out onto the balcony, inhaled deeply, and yelled with conviction that she was still alive before heading back to her house in the present world. At his grandmother's house now, Shiro sat on the floor, gazing at the altar where her photo rested, unable to accept that she might still be alive. His mind spun as he studied the picture of the old woman who loved striking poses with the peace sign, carefree of others' opinions. Taking a steadying breath, he tried to sort through his feelings, then looked at the photo again, certain he'd find her at the harvest festival. Determined, he stood and crossed through the portal, returning to the other world, recalling how just a day earlier, while speaking with Sankara, he'd learned something astonishing. She'd revealed his grandmother wasn't merely an oddball, but a renowned legendary witch, and the mayor, reflecting on her disappearance, told Shiro she understood his urgency to find her, yet suggested he stay in Nin a bit longer since his grandmother had appeared at last year's harvest festival. Shiro was struck by the realization that if it happened once, it could happen again, especially since his grandmother adored festivals, making it likely she'd show up this year. Sankara backed up his hunch, noting this festival would be extra special as the city marked its 120th anniversary, and as mayor, she was planning a huge event, even asking him to pitch in. Weeks later, with just 2 months until the celebration, Shiro, a festival enthusiast, eagerly agreed to Sankara's invitation but soon found himself stumped, unsure what unique contribution he could make. Food seemed too common with all the stalls and contests already planned, and traditional games were off the table since they'd be everywhere, so he pondered deeply, frustrated as he scratched his head, urging his memory to dig up a fresh idea from his past, until inspiration suddenly struck, prompting him to grab several cameras and rush off. Arriving at the store, Shiro set down the gear, and Anna, puzzled, scrunched her face and asked what it was all about. Grinning, Shiro said it was a fair question, then eagerly explained the cameras were for a new product he'd sell, though the little girl still looked lost. Seeing her confusion, he opted for a hands-on approach, asking Anna to face him as he snapped a photo and showed her the result, her eyes popping wide as she wondered how it got trapped in the paper, and if it shrank inside. Shiro chuckled at her amazement, then clarified that the device could instantly turn people and scenes into pictures, offering a perfect chance to try it out. He asked Anna to smile, snapping multiple shots as she marveled at the images, soon begging to learn how to use it herself, and after some fumbling, she clumsily took a photo of Shiro, excitedly asking if it worked. After putting in some effort, he confirmed that the picture came out great, and radiant Anna grew even more thrilled, eager to snap more shots of him. The young man got into the spirit, posing a few times, though he soon decided he'd had enough after a handful of photos. Anna then noticed another camera and asked what it was, so Shiro explained it was a Polaroid, leaving the girl amazed at the variety of cameras out there. The young man gave Anna a little nudge to get her attention, and as soon as she looked his way, he clicked a photo of her, teasing that he'd caught her off guard. The little girl stared at the picture and grumbled that she didn't look good in it. But then she got an idea and called out to Shiro. The moment he turned, she swiftly took a Polaroid shot of him, giggling that it was her chance to catch him off guard. The young man raised an eyebrow, asking if that was her way of getting back at him. But when he saw the photo of himself flashing a peace sign, he noticed how much he looked like his grandmother. Just then, Stella walked into the shop and thanked Shiro for looking after her daughter that day. He grinned and asked how she was settling into the new place, and if she still felt worn out from moving. Stella replied that, thanks to his support, she wasn't struggling at all. Shiro had arranged a corporate apartment for her and her daughter near the shop. Anna seized the moment to tease that her mom was awful at keeping things tidy, which made Stella flush and tell her daughter to hush. Shiro just chuckled, saying they could rely on him if they needed assistance, and Anna, feeling a bit shy, thanked him sincerely. Then she playfully added that he was probably just as bad at organizing, leaving Shiro at a loss for words as he scratched his head and said sorry. The little girl beamed at him and gave an enthusiastic wave goodbye, and Shiro waved back, watching them leave with a peaceful, content smile. The Silver Moon Guild had now joined the powerful Fairy Blessing Guild, and Shiro recalled his first visit when all he could hear was Emil crying behind her desk, quite a contrast to the lively scene he found now as he stepped inside. The place had transformed completely, with several adventurers talking energetically and swapping tips about the forest. The young man could hardly believe this guild, nearly shut down 2 months earlier, was now one of the kingdom's busiest. Spotting him, Emil hurried over and asked if he'd come just to see her, the bunny girl. She patted Shiro and, with a cheeky grin, wondered if he'd brought her a fancy, pricey gift. Irritated, Shiro told her to cut it out, but she kept poking fun at him. She teased that, if he wanted, she'd agree to be his wife and live a lavish life with him, already picturing herself married, residing in a grand castle, riding carriages, or even soaring on a dragon while tossing gold coins to the crowd. Shiryu, however, firmly turned her down. Undeterred, Emil went on, saying he could do anything he liked with her, and that, despite how she seemed, she was really quite loving. As she spoke, she reached toward her collar, adjusting it teasingly, making Shiryu freak out and plead with her to stop. Desperate to get out of the mess, he asked if she didn't have work to do, but Emil shot back with a sly grin that she was about to take a break. Before Shiryu could respond, the bunny girl pinned him against the wall and asked if he'd like to have a drink with her in a quiet, dark room. Trying to escape, Shiryu thanked her but declined, taking her hand to push her away gently, recalling one of his grandmother's lessons: never be alone in a dark room with a woman who can't handle her liquor. That had been her final wish, though he'd recently learned his grandmother was still alive. The adventurers nearby burst into laughter, noting that Emil was at it again with her antics. Playing dumb, the bunny girl smiled and said Shiryu was gripping her hand so passionately that, if she hadn't pushed him, he'd have dragged her off to a dark room himself. She leaned in closer, claiming that teased that deep down, she knew he liked her. Sweat beaded on the young man's forehead as leaned in too close, making Shiryu panic and pull away. Shiryu shouted for assistance, saying an octopus was attacking him, when suddenly a figure emerged from behind a mill. It was Killa the scout, who swiftly kicked the rabbit girl, sending her soaring through the air into a wooden barrel. Shiryu cheered, declaring the awful octopus trap vanquished, and Killa checked if he was all right. With tears of relief, the young man confirmed he was fine. At the same time, adventurers at the guild's bar raised their beer mugs in a lively toast. Shiryu expressed gratitude to Killa for rescuing him from Ael's grasp. The cat girl then shared that rabbit people get extra wild during a full moon. Ael denied this, but Neska the sorceress felt bad for Shiryu, noting it didn't seem like a good relationship. Ralph teased that Miss Ael nearly took a bite of Shiryu's forbidden fruit, and the rabbit girl proudly chomped on a chicken leg to prove it. Surprised, the group asked how she was still around. Ael casually said she didn't like being excluded. Suddenly, loud yells rang out as two adventurers began brawling, and the others eagerly placed bets on the winner. Shiryu stood, suggesting they stop the fight, but Lyra chuckled, saying scraps among adventurers were common, almost like a hello. He added that tension in town had been growing recently. Shiryu asked why, and Lyra explained that a forest expedition had drawn adventurers from everywhere, the best in the kingdom. Yet after 2 months, no ruins had turned up. As they spoke, the fight raged on. One adventurer swung at his rival, who narrowly dodged and struck back with a sharp kick. Shiryu remarked that everyone seemed stretched thin, and Lyra agreed, noting that with little to do in the small town, frustration was mounting. A girl hiding under the table nudged Shiryu, who quickly begged her not to lift her shirt again. Pouting, she promised she wouldn't. She assured him she'd never do that with so many people around, then grinned slyly, saying Lyra meant that when he mentioned distractions. Shiryu didn't get it, and Ael laughed, calling him clueless. She meant BRS, obviously. Lyra blushed and denied it, insisting that wasn't true, but Ael pressed, asking why he was so rattled. Then Neska stomped Lyra's foot with her heel, scolding him for spouting rubbish. He tried to explain, but the sorceress pressed harder, making the warrior yelp in pain. The adventurers' fight finally ended, just as Anne walked in, her strong presence filling the room. With a stern glare, she demanded to know what was happening. The fighters froze and swore they weren't brawling. Spotting Shiryu, Anne apologized for barging in. He just marveled at how amazing she was. Then Anne saw Ael under the table and called her out. The rabbit girl shivered as Anne, with a menacing smile, asked if she'd been there all along and why she hadn't stopped the fight sooner. Ael stammered an explanation, but Anne wasn't having it. Without delay, she hauled Ael outside as the rabbit girl yelled for Shiryu to save his future wife, begging Anne for any punishment besides a pay cut. Once things settled, Lyra approached Shiryu with a request. He explained that while hunting for ruins in the forest, they'd stumbled on rare flowers. The group filled Shiryu in on the mission, and excited, he said he'd tag along. Lyra asked if he was certain, and Shiryu confirmed, though he'd need protection. The warrior grinned, promising they were tougher than ever. With that, everyone raised their mugs again, clinking them in a joyful toast. A soft breeze swept over the flower-filled field, and Shiryu felt captivated, gazing at the flower's beauty. As he gazes over the vast landscape, he can't help but grin, remarking on how amazing and special those flowers are. Neska, the group's sorceress, gently inspects the blooms and shares in her steady, wise voice that they are Apsara, a scarce type that only grows where the water is perfectly pure. She notes they are tender and frail, but incredibly valuable for creating strong healing potions. After her words, the group chooses to rest for a bit, lying down among the flowers. Across the field, Lyre catches the trio's attention, folding her arms and looking at them with a frown of disapproval. With a teasing tone, the warrior remarks that she figured Nesca and Killa would nap the moment they could, but she's caught off guard seeing Shiru so calm and nearly dozing off. The young man Shiru says sorry, explaining that after their long, exhausting trek, his body is worn out and all he craves is a short rest. Lyre brushes off his words, stressing they need to complete their work before the sun sets. Only then can they relax as much as they like. A week earlier, the group got this job when Azure Flash Guild members stumbled upon those rare flowers while exploring. They learned the Apsara were key for crafting top-tier healing potions, prized by the kingdom's doctors and healers. But there was a catch. The flowers faded fast on the return trip, losing their power before delivery, even with Nesca's efforts to water them or use magic to keep them fresh. Nothing seemed to work, and the group nearly abandoned the mission until Lyre had a clever thought and turned to Shiru for assistance. Since the young man has a rare spatial storage skill, he can hold huge amounts of items without feeling their weight. Plus, anything in that space stays perfectly preserved, frozen in time, keeping it from spoiling or weakening. Lyre announces they'd gathered enough flowers for now, but then she notices something. She suddenly sees that Killa has been asleep this whole time, totally unaware of their talk. Before Lyre can wake her, the cat hears an odd noise, and her face turns serious as she alerts the group that something's coming. Instantly, everyone tenses up and pulls out their weapons. Soon, a swarm of giant insects, Rosero beetles, huge and frightening, appears overhead, and Shiru's eyes grow wide at the sight. Seeing the massive insects, Shiru stares in shock, while Lyre mentally tries to tally them, guessing there are at least 17, a number that doesn't feel promising. Lyre steps up, telling everyone to stay perfectly still and quiet. Shiru examines the beetles closer and spots that many are wounded, their bodies marked with deep gashes. Nesca assesses the scene and decides those cuts came from a wind-slicing spell, and Roll, the group's cleric, adds that the dripping fluid suggests the injuries are fresh. Before they can figure out what attacked the insects, Lyre warns that the beetles have spotted them. With no options left, she swiftly tells Roll to guard Shiru while Nesca starts casting a spell. The sorceress replies she's already on it, and with a quick flick, she launches a blazing fire arrow from her staff. The strike sends several beetles crashing down in flames, and Roll moves to shield Shiru. In front of Shiru, a warning is issued that no harm will come to him, but Killa responds by hurling several sharp knives at the beetles, only to be shocked when the blades bounce off harmlessly. Before she can act further, the insects surround her, prompting a scream for Nesca's help. The sorceress, staying calm as always, casts a fresh spell, unleashing a fierce fire blast that burns a few more foes to ashes. Shiru figures out that fire is these insects' weakness and swiftly hatches a plan. Shiru dashes off, leaving Ralph anxious, who yells at him not to act rashly and cautions that the bug spray from earlier won't stop these creatures. But Shiru grins and promises he's got a new trick up his sleeve. The young man whips out a small lighter from his pocket, and grabbing a can of gas spray, sparks them together to make a massive flame. The fire shoots through the air, striking the beetles and turning them to dust in moments, as he crafted a makeshift flamethrower. Shiru glances at his friends and cautions them that this stunt was highly risky and not something to try at home. Still amazed, Lyre wonders if it was magic, but before Shiru can reply, he nods to Ralph to take out a lingering insect. The cleric obeys instantly, smashing the beast with his mighty mace, breaking its tough shell. With just 6 foes left, Lyre cheerfully notes they're close to victory. But then the beetles start grouping up and aiming their assault. Their attack shifts toward Nesca, and Shiru readies his flamethrower again, only to realize the sorceress is too near the insects. Any flame would hit her too. Before he can devise another plan, a beetle charges at Nesca. In a flash, Shiru sprints over, shoving her aside, but takes the hit instead, the insect's claws digging into him. Lyre yells in panic, telling Shiru to leap into the river to shake off the creature, and with no options left, he dives in. The water ploy succeeds, freeing him from the beetle, but now Shiru is swept away by the rapid current. Nesca casts a spell, calling on water spirits to shield the young man, though Lyre freaks out seeing Shiru pulled toward the riverbank. The leader of Azure Flash bows to track him down and hopes Shiru holds on. Regaining awareness, Shiru wonders if his friends will rescue him, when a female voice suddenly calls out, urging him to stay strong. Coughing up swallowed water, Shiru hears the girl cheer that he's alive, but he's stunned as she cuts him off, asking if he's never met a fairy before. He excitedly asks if she's truly a fairy, having never encountered one, marveling at her realness. The tiny figure, no bigger than a hand, boasts long hair and glowing wings that shimmer in the light. Hovering close, she flutters gracefully but shyly tells him not to gawk at her like that. Feeling rude, Shiro quickly says sorry, and she folds her arms, staring at him as if waiting for more. Confused, he fumbles and says it's nice to meet her, but the fairy sighs in annoyance, saying that's not it. Shaking her head, she questions who he thinks pulled him from the waterfall, pointing out he'd have plunged over and ended up dead without her help. Hearing this, Shiro instantly thanks her and bows respectfully. The fairy puts her hands on her hips, asking why he was in the river, like it's some weird pastime. He denies it fast, explaining it's a long tale that unfolded quickly. After hearing him out, she shakes her head, noting he really got attacked by monsters and that it's risky business. Teasingly calling him weak, she asks where he's from, and Shiro answers that he hails from Men. In a small town called Norwich, located west of their current spot, her eyes grow big with wonder as she says the name again, Norwich, the place where humans live, and she asks if he could bring her there. The young man, taken aback, looks at her and wonders why she's so interested, asking if she's ever visited the town before. The fairy frowns and questions if that means no. Shiro rubs his head and agrees to take her, but first he wants to know if she has any friends in the town. The fairy beams and says yes, she knows a human guy, describing him with excitement. She explains that he was a little taller than Shiro, had stunning eyes and a great smile, with hair and eyes matching the sky's color. She eagerly asks if Shiro knows him, but the young man replies that being the same race doesn't mean all humans know each other, then asks for the guy's name. The little fairy pauses, thinking hard, and shakes her head, admitting she doesn't know what to say. She tells him that before meeting Shiro, that human was the only one she'd met, so she just called him something simple. She'd named him Cumin, and Shiro wonders if he might have been a hunter or maybe an adventurer. The young man notes that the way she talks about him sounds almost romantic, and asks if they were a couple. The fairy lightly taps his forehead, making a face, and asks if he's stupid, saying there's no chance of a fairy and a human being together like that. They were just friends, though really good ones. Shiro grins and says they must be best friends, and the fairy agrees. She confirms it right away, no doubt in her mind. The young man pauses to think and asks if she knows the forest well, since she seems comfortable there. The fairy says yes, explaining she was born and raised in the giant forest. Shiro sees a chance and offers a deal. If she guides him through this part of the forest, he'll take her to Norwich, and he asks what she thinks. Her eyes light up with happiness as she asks if he's serious, and if he'll really take her to the city, agreeing to his plan without a second thought. She says she'll even keep Shiro safe on the way and tells him to watch her skills. The girl lifts a hand and unleashes a strong wind gust, a slicing blast that knocks down a few trees nearby. Seeing how powerful her attack is, Shiro's eyes widen in shock, and he asks if that was really needed. The fairy puts her hands on her hips and says she's not great at controlling her magic, but it doesn't matter because her strength is what counts, showing off by flexing her arm muscles. As if to brag, she proudly tells him that earlier a group of rhinoceros beetles attacked, but she scared them all off by herself. Thinking back on everything, Shiro realizes she was the one who hurt the insects, and he says the mystery is finally solved. Shiro holds out his hand to her and says they've got a deal, introducing himself properly to the fairy. The girl taps her chin, shakes her head, and says she finds his name odd but accepts it anyway. She then tells him her name is Full, and Shiro smiles, saying from now on he'll be her commander. But Patty crosses her arms and pouts, saying she doesn't like that and suggests that starting now, Shiro should call her Chief instead. The young man laughs and agrees, saying yes, Chief, to humor her. Patty grins, please, and tells him to say it again. Shiro calls her Chief loudly, and the fairy spins in the air around him, thrilled. Shiro watches her and asks if she enjoys that. He calls her Chief again, but Patty frowns and asks why he's talking like that. The young man teases that it's how lackeys speak, but an annoyed Patty says she doesn't like it and tells him to stop. He suggests calling her Captain instead, but she snaps back, no way. Shiro keeps joking, calling her mighty and saying as her servant, he'll do his best to follow her orders to thank her for saving his life, but she says she doesn't like that either. Night falls, and they sit around a campfire they've lit. Patty gazes at the flickering flames and wonders if Shiro misses his friends. The young man lifts his eyes to the starry sky and says that naturally he does, as they were his close companions. While they chat, he thinks his friends might be out looking for him. Excited, Patty declares she's made up her mind to assist him in finding them. Shiro questions if she's certain, but the fairy insists that as his leader, it's her duty, and he should rely on her to handle it all. She then asks if the young man feels hungry, and Shiro realizes he hasn't eaten anything all day. Patty puts her hands on her hips and announces that since he's under her command, she'll provide him with food. Suddenly, a blinding light flashes before his eyes. He blinks a few times, and when his sight clears, Shiro is amazed. Patty asks if something's off or if he's not hungry, but the young man is just marveling that she too has the storage ability, which makes things even more fascinating and remarkable. Patty summons a big, glowing magic circle that shines brightly and hums with power before a portal opens. A gateway forms in the air in front of her, and with a soft motion, she draws out a fruit. Her eyes sparkle with playful delight as she looks at Shiro, who stares back in shock and wonder. The fairy tilts her head a bit with a curious grin, asking if he's never seen someone use the inventory skill like she does. The young man's heart pounds with the stunning realization that Patty has this rare and special talent too. He starts to form a question, but before he can speak, she cuts in. The fairy begins to explain in a thrilled and slightly boastful voice that among fairies, unique skills are very common, and many share the same gift of storing things in a personal magical space. She keeps digging through her inventory, flipping through unseen items, and pulling out different objects with a thoughtful look until she uncovers a small, gleaming glass bottle holding a golden liquid that glows in the light. With a cheeky smile, the fairy offers it to Shiro, so he lifts the bottle to his lips and takes a sip. A soothing warmth flows through him, and a burst of pure joy hits him instantly. He gasps in amazement, declaring the mead incredibly tasty. Patty beams with pride and agrees it's great because she made it. She confirms the mead's excellence since she prepared it herself and tells Shiro he can have as much as he likes because she has plenty stored, so there's no need to hold back. They'll keep watch overnight to make sure nothing catches them off guard while they rest. In a firm yet kind voice, Patty orders Shiro to finish his drink and then lie down to sleep for a bit. Shiro, already feeling the calming effects of the drink and a light sleepiness from the alcohol, simply smiles thankfully and follows without protest, shutting his eyes and giving in to rest. The next morning, Patty is cosily sitting on the young man's head when he wakes up and starts chatting with him, explaining that the forest is filled with many races, some friendly, some less so. She notes the presence of fierce orcs and huge, fearsome ogres, creatures lacking smarts but full of brute force and hostility. Patty adds that if he looks over there, pointing eagerly, he might spot elves, mysterious, enchanting beings who live in tune with nature. She shares that once, out of sheer curiosity, she tried to get close to the elves' land, but to her surprise, they put up a magical shield around their territory, blocking anyone from entering or even peeking inside. Annoyed, she eventually gave up trying. While attempting to cross a path, Shiro listens carefully as someone grumbles about how distant and quiet the others seem, but eventually he leans his head back, lets out a tired breath, and requests a short rest because his legs ache from walking so much. The fairy folds her arms and mutters, annoyed that he's asking to pause again, though she soon agrees as long as it's only for a little while. As they sit, Patty notices a strange flower and points it out, explaining in her knowledgeable way that it's an unusual type called a baboon flower, adding that its nectar tastes odd and awful. Shiro raises his eyebrows, curious, while the fairy chatters on happily, sharing how she once tried the nectar by mistake and hated its lingering, terrible flavor. Shiro thinks about Patty's habit of constantly talking about odd topics, stuffing his mind with interesting but often useless facts, and learns that long ago, before Patty existed, that land belonged to an old nation named Jinnah. This country later crumbled into ruins, and over time, a thick, untamed forest sprang up where its cities once stood, now called the Forest of Jinnah. Frowning, the young man asks if this all took place during the time of an ancient magical society, but Patty snaps back, irritated, wondering how she could possibly know that since it all happened well before her birth. Shiro shrugs and drops the debate, but then Hade grows tense and watchful, her keen senses detecting something odd. Her instincts kick in, and Hade quickly tells Shiro to hide without hesitation or questions. Before they can move, faint yells echo through the trees, calling Shiro's name. It's the adventurers from AIA Flash searching for him in the forest. Rolf's loud voice asks if Shiro can hear them, while Lyra's tone sounds frantic, even admitting emotionally that she'd be devastated if he were gone. Nesca smacks Rolf with her staff, chiding him for his gloomy words, and the warrior brushes away tears, insisting firmly that he's certain Shiro is still alive. Nesca's face softens as she pats his head to calm him, agreeing that Shiro is okay. Kayla darts between the trees, looking for her friend, and when Shiro finally hears familiar voices, he jumps up, ignoring Patty's complaints. She calls him foolish for revealing himself so fast. Shiro calms her, explaining that these are his trusted friends, his dear companions. He shouts to them that he's there, and they turn toward him. But then they notice Keela is gone. The scout had been snatched by a bird. Spotting Shiro, Keela hits the bird, escapes, and crashes down, landing on Shiro's face with her chest, leaving the group puzzled by the commotion. Tearfully, Keela hugs him tight, saying she feared he was dead, then hugs him tightly in relief, vowing never to lose him again. The group bows to Shiro, but he assures them he's fine and asks them to stand up. Lara, full of regret, apologizes, reminding him she'd sworn to protect him but failed to do so. Nesca chimes in, noting this is the second time he's saved her life, and she promises to make it up to him. Shiro tells them he's safe and back with his friends, and that's what counts. They start to object, but he interrupts, asking if they aren't his friends. Stuttering, Lara confirms they are, and Keela adds that they're friends despite their leader being a bit silly. They poke fun at Lyra and laugh together, while Roland admits he's amazed Shiro made it back alone. Shiro explains he wasn't entirely on his own and introduces Patty, who'd been hiding behind a tree. The adventurers are stunned, and Shiro shares that she's a fairy, his guide, and he owes her his life. Shocked, they press him for details, as fairies are incredibly rare and legendary. As the ghost tribe, they rarely mingled with other races, and Shiro asks Patty if this is accurate. The fairy replies slowly that they weren't allowed to leave their area because it broke the rules. Shiro mentions he thought fairies were common since the guild was named Blessing of the Fairies. Patty snaps back, annoyed, asking why they'd share their blessings with humans. Shiro suggests that perhaps a fairy once blessed a human. Nesca questions if he didn't know, leaving the young man puzzled. Noticing Shiro's confusion, the sorcerer steps in and explains that Blessing of the Fairies is actually the name of a special alcoholic drink made only by fairies, also called Fairy Made. Shiro turns to Patty and asks if that's the drink she gave him. The fairy beams with pride, confirming it, while Nesca shakes him in alarm, asking if he really drank it. Shiro isn't sure whether to stare at Lyre or Nesca as the group peppers Shiro with questions about whether he truly consumed Fairy Made. They wonder if Shiro really drank Fairy Made, since a single glass could buy a castle. Ralph chimes in, saying guild records show it was last sold 200 years ago. Shiro is stunned to hear how rare the drink is. Patty explains she gave it to him because he's her subordinate. The warrior feels lost in the situation, but Stella brushes it off, saying it's a long tale. After Shiro shares what happened with his friends, they're amazed he was saved by a fairy. Lyre steps forward to thank Patty for rescuing their friend. Lyre expresses gratitude and offers to do anything to repay Patty for saving their companion. Shiro then asks if she could help them find someone, though the fairy's vague clues weren't much help. Still, they agree to assist with the search. Now that the adventurers are together, they decide to return to Norik. After walking for a while, they near the city, and Patty's eyes light up in awe. She points it out to Shiro, calling it the human's dwelling, but the sorceress corrects her. The sorceress clarifies that it's a city, and Nesca adds that settlements have different names based on their size. The fairy repeats the words, saying she gets it, and Lyre tells Shiro that a subordinate's life is hard. Patty spots someone far off and asks who it is. As they approach, Anna waits for Shiro at the entrance. The little girl looks sad, and Shiro, worried, asks why she's there. Anna rushes to him, crying, and hugs him tightly, while Stella steps forward, relieved he's finally back. The Azure Flash group says their farewells, and Anna's mother notes that the little girl hadn't slept, fretting over Shiro. He offers to carry Anna, but Stella says it's not needed since she'll soon be too big to carry. She wants to hold her daughter while she still can. Shiro notices Stella looks worn out and says she should tell him if it gets too heavy. Stubbornly, she insists she won't say a word and refuses to let him take Anna. Stella declares she won't hand Anna over because she's her daughter. Shiro walks them home, and when they arrive, he says goodbye, hoping Anna rests well. As he turns to leave, Stella stops him, saying she forgot something. She then welcomes him into her home. Shiro heads back to the shop, and Patty marvels at its size. He asks what kind of homes fairies have, and she explains they built them high in trees to keep monsters away. Then she shifts the topic. Patty asks Shiro if he still recalls their deal. He confirms he does, and will help her find her friend, noting that in a small town, it won't take long. Excited, they agree to start searching the next day, sealing it with a cheerful fist bump. Shiro asks the fairy if the delicious fairy-made drink she gave him is hard to make. Patty says it's simple with honey, but gathering honey is tough. She recalls nearly dying from bee attacks the last time she tried. While Patty is speaking, the young man unzips his backpack and takes out a jar of honey, asking if it will do the job. Patty agrees and is amazed that he found some. When she looks closer, she's stunned and questions if it's truly honey. Shiro assures her it's completely pure, fresh from a beehive. The fairy slips her finger into the jar for a taste and is delighted by its flavor. Thrilled, she declares that her mead will be even tastier with this honey, and Shiro wonders if that's true. The young man decides it's time to rest, mentioning he's stiff from sleeping on the forest ground. Morning comes, and Shiro is dozing on the couch with the fairy resting on his head. Suddenly, Anna shows up, startling them awake. He asks why she's there, explaining he told Stella the shop would stay closed today. The little girl says she brought him some food. Curious, Anna steps closer and asks about the girl on his head. Shiro introduces her as Patty, his new boss. Patty, the fairy, makes Anna's eyes sparkle with wonder as she asks if Patty is like the fairies in storybooks. Patty then asks who this child is. The young man explains that Anna helps him at the shop. Changing topics, the fairy asks Anna if she knows a man with blue eyes and blue hair. Anna says no, she's never met anyone like that, which saddens Patty. Shiro steps in, noting that he and Anna don't know everyone in town, but since it's small, they might find him. He suggests they could start looking now and asks Patty if she'd like that. Anna eagerly offers to assist, exciting Patty, who checks if the girl really wants to help. Anna says yes, making the fairy squeal with joy. Shiro points out they need to hide Patty first, and Anna suggests her backpack. The fairy settles comfortably in the bag, and with everything ready, they head out to find Patty's friend. Shiro shows a necklace pendant picture to several townsfolk, but no one knows it. The elf at the town hall acts unsure if she's seen it, and says a name would help. Gerald, the merchant, doesn't recognize it from his wares, nor do the dove or the mercenary at the bar know who owns it. Shiro studies the picture, puzzled, since all 27 people he asked didn't recall it. Anna wonders if the fairy's friend isn't from this town after all. Patty suddenly recalls her friend saying he lived in NK, and all they had to go on were their matching necklaces. Shiro had snapped a photo of Patty's pendant to show around. Then Sankara arrives, looking for the young man, and mentions hearing he's off on another adventure with Liar's crew. She scolds him, asking when he'll stop worrying her. He says sorry, but Sankara brushes it off, saying she's just glad he's safe, messing up his hair. Anna teases that his face is red, but Shiro insists he's just warm and shifts focus by showing Sankara the pendant photo. Sankara looks at it closely and feels it's familiar, though she can't place it. She promises to return if she remembers anything. He asks if she'd really do that for him, and with a smile, Sankara says yes, owing him for past help. She says farewell, adding she'll stop by the guild. Shiro asks if she's meeting Emo, but Sankara corrects him. She's confronting the Azure Flash group who endangered her friend. She gives off a menacing vibe, and the young man quickly says he volunteered to go. Ignoring him, Sankara walks off. Shaken, Shiro hopes his friends, Liar, Neska, Ralph, and Killa, are safe. Once she's gone, Anna asks if Patty can sleep in her bed, and Shiro turns to the fairy for her thoughts. Patty cautiously agrees that she's fine staying with the little girl, but only for that night, while Shiro nicknames her a tiny sunder fairy. Anna comes home, gently carrying her backpack, and tells her mother she has something to show her, but it must stay a secret. Stella, puzzled at first, promises to keep it confidential and asks what it is. The little girl explains it's inside her bag, and though Stella guesses it might be a lizard or a frog, she's about to be astonished. When the girl unzips her backpack, a small fairy named Patty is revealed inside, and Patty eagerly asks Stella if she's Anna's mom, noting how similar they look, especially their eye color. Stella, stunned to see a fairy, goes still, worrying Anna. Patty hops onto the bed Shiro had prepared for Stella and Anna, bouncing with glee and saying she's never rested on anything so comfy. Stella brings some tea for everyone and then inquires about the young man Patty had mentioned. Anna chimes in, eager to hear more, and the fairy pauses briefly before Shiro encourages her to share the whole story. The fairy explains it started when she first ventured beyond fairylands, spotting a young man hunting a unicorn rabbit in the woods. Patty wasn't sure what tool he used, but it shot a twig incredibly fast. The young man was terrible with his bow, and every miss left him looking ready to weep, reminding her of a child, which made Patty giggle. Her laughter went on until her sides ached, but eventually, tired of his sulking, she decided to assist, striking the unicorn rabbit perfectly. The young man gaped at her in awe and asked if she was a fairy, marking their first encounter. After meeting over the unicorn rabbit, he kept crying, praising how tasty it was, confusing the fairy since she found it awful. Then he clarified he hadn't eaten well in days. Grateful, the young man said she saved his life and asked her name, but she hesitated, recalling past cruelty from humans, and said she'd tell him once his hunting improved. They hunted together over time, and he eventually got skilled. He asked Patty if he'd proved himself enough for her to share her name, and though she was thrilled and ready to say it, a memory of being labeled a cursed child stopped her. Unable to say her name, she promised to tell him later, and he grew concerned but didn't push her. That became their final meeting. Patty shares with Anna that he was her friend, and though they were both lonely, together they weren't. Resolute, the fairy declares she must find him to share her name and learn his. She admits she rambled, then feels water hit her, asking if it's rain, but Anna turns to her with teary eyes. Anna, crying, vows they'll find her friend, and the fairy, touched, agrees they definitely will. 2 hours earlier, Shiro steps out of a portal wearing casual home clothes and a towel, savoring the thought of a hot bath at home, then heads to his shop's balcony to see the sunset. Suddenly, Elle calls out to him, and a young man asks him to wait, saying he'll come down. As he nears, Shiro notices something troubling. Shiro grows worried for the warrior, whose face is puffy like he'd been hit, and asks what happened. Lyre brushes it off as nothing, explaining Sankara stormed into the guild, furious. Lyre asked if she'd come just to shout about them taking Shiro on a risky trip, and the mayor confirmed it, saying she'd spare no one. The warrior offered to let her slap or punch him, it'd help, and Sankara struck Lyre hard across the face with all her strength. The leader of Azure Flash, noticing the warrior's strength causing him to stumble, invites Shiro for drinks at the guild, mentioning that Emil and the guild master will join them. Shiro agrees, finding the idea enjoyable, and they gather at the guild's bar, toasting with raised glasses. Lyre starts a countdown, leading to a cheerful group shout. Kila, Emil, and May join in, lifting their drinks, while Shiro and Lyre gulp theirs down. Ralph, watching them, rose pensive, prompting Lyre to ask if something's bothering him. Nay chimes in, asking if he dislikes the beer. Shiro, a bit embarrassed, admits he doesn't care for the beer and apologizes, but Nay brushes it off, saying she's not a fan either. Amy, surprised, asks if it's true, and the guild master confirms it, noting quietly that the limited drink options frustrate adventurers. She adds that better choices might help, but the cost isn't justified. Kila mentions she'd prefer wine or cider, despite their sourness, as they have a pleasant aroma. Neska cuts in, telling her not to expect too much. Shiro asks if the local wine is truly sour, and Lyre, slightly tipsy, teases if he's never tried wine or only sipped fancy ones as a grand merchant. Shiro replies he hasn't, but in his homeland, quality wines were affordable. He describes 3 types, red, white, and rosa, leaving the adventurers in awe. Shiro adds he's heard of orange wine, noting each type has unique traits. Some wines are sweet, others dry, some light, others robust, with prices ranging from cheap to extravagant. He explains that wine experts pair types with meals, but he prefers sake, which, like wine, has varieties such as Jingo and Jemai. Shiro suddenly realizes the bar is staring at him, and an older adventurer urges him to go on. He shares that his homeland's trade with other nations brought diverse drinks. The crowd gazes at him, intrigued, and Shiro sees a business opportunity. Addressing them, he asks them to return in 3 days, promising to bring homeland drinks for all. 3 days later, Shiro, transformed, combs his hair back and wears sharp bartender attire. Anna compliments his stylish look, and he returns the praise. Stella also admires his appearance, calling him professional, and Shiro says she looks stunning. Lai arrives, noting everyone's elegance, and asks if Anna is helping out. Shiro didn't want the young girl working, but she insisted, even bringing her mother. Neska announces everything's set, having made ice with magic, while Kila serves drinks. Shiro offers each their favorite. Neska picks chocolate liquor, Kila chooses fruit wine. He asks Anna if she'd like a drink, and she shyly requests gin, then admits she wants ginger ale. A crowd grows impatient, asking if they can drink yet. Shiro thanks them for waiting and launches the event, introducing himself as Shiro, owner of Shiro's shop. He says he brought drinks from his store to liven things up post-forest missions, despite some doubting his stock's size. He adds that he's brought plenty of snacks to pair with the drinks. Some adventurers whisper, wondering if he's an alchemist, but no one dwells on it. They are all eager for quality drinks. The celebration kicks off, with Shiro's offerings sparking excitement among the guild members, who are ready to enjoy the unique flavors he's promised to share from his homeland. Shiro finally declares that all drinks are on the house, inviting everyone to enjoy as much as they want, and the crowd explodes with excitement. The young man reflects nervously on spending 3 million yen on goods, though he views it as a worthwhile investment. He contacts Guild Master Nei Mirage to address the group. Nei warmly welcomes everyone, encouraging them to have fun but reminding them to be fit for work tomorrow. Eager and drooling, the adventurers shout in approval and rush forward to place their orders. The crowd swarms Shiro, pushing him into a corner, but Nei steps in, stomping the floor with authority and warning that she might end the event if they don't settle down. Shiro appreciates her assistance as the group forms orderly lines. Liar, the first in line, asks Shiro what he'd like to drink, and Liar points to a bottle, curious about it. The young man identifies it as bottled beer, strongly suggesting it, and Liar opts for it, while Anna mentions that adding lemon juice could improve the taste. The leader of Azure Flash follows Anna's advice, squeezing lemon into his beer, and is astonished by how delicious it becomes. The drink is bubbly and refreshing, with the lemon's tang enhancing it further, so he takes a hearty swig from his mug. Shiro notes that a dash of salt could make it even tastier, and soon everyone requests the same drink. The patrons adore it, prompting Shiro to ask Stella for the bottle on his right and Anna for a Mexican drink, exhausted from keeping up with the demand. The young man observes that the night is a success, with everyone enjoying themselves, until a new customer steps up, smirking and asking for the strongest drink available. Some adventurers recognize him as Ilo, the Indestructible, one of the 16 heroes. Shiro confirms if he truly wants the most potent option and offers Spyrus, a drink so powerful it could ignite a flame. He pours it into a small glass, but Ilo grumbles about the tiny portion, glaring at Shiro and calling him a kid, boasting that he's over 200 years old. Ilo protests being treated like a child, but Shiro clarifies that the drink's strength and 96% alcohol content means a single sip could knock him out. Offended, Ilo insists he's never been drunk and challenges the warning. The young man urges him to relax, cautioning that such a high dose could be lethal, but the adventurer, eager to test his limits, removes his cloak and dares Shiro to settle it with a fight outside. At that moment, Ralph, a humble cleric, steps forward and introduces himself. Ilo snaps, asking if the priest plans to preach, claiming Shiro insulted his dwarven pride. Dwarves, he says, drink straight from barrels from birth, with alcohol in their blood. Ralph calmly acknowledges Ilo's feelings, and with permission offers a solution. The dwarf demands to hear it, and Ralph explains he could cast a healing spell, typically used for poison, to ease intoxication effects. Turning to Shiro, Ralph suggests that if Ilo gets sick from the drink, he could heal him, asking if this arrangement works for everyone. They all consent, and Ilo scoffs that they thought a drink would defeat him. He'd battled fearsome beasts like the Demon Lord and ancient dragons, never kneeling before. The crowd buzzes with excitement at the mention of these legendary foes and roars in support of the dwarf. Shiro suddenly notices Ilo seems much larger as the dwarf demands the drink, proposing a wager. If he gets drunk, Shiro can name any reward, but if he wins, Shiro owes him free drinks for life. Extending his mug, Ilo orders it filled to the brim, and Shiro complies, accepting the bet. The dwarf sniffs the Spyrus, remarking that its potent aroma surpasses anything he's encountered before. Before he tips the mother into the crowd's eager stares, he's already drunk, gulping down every last bit, while Shiro watches in surprise as the dwarf lets out a sigh, complaining that his belly feels like it's burning. Slamming the mug onto the counter, he dares the young man, asking if he seems tipsy, and Shiro rubs his neck, confessing he misjudged him and lost their wager. Ilo bursts into laughter, declaring that the young man now owes him free drinks anytime he demands, chuckling so hard he tumbles backward onto the floor, totally wasted. The young man, plastered, lectures Eldo, pointing out he cautioned him against chugging so much at once, noting that without Roll there, he might have died a hero or not, and that his actions insulted the booze. The dwarf nods in agreement, and nearby adventurers remark they'd never seen Oz so humiliated, especially after countless fights, finally brought low by liquor. They ponder the drink's name, with one suggesting it sounded like Spy Something, and they toss around the idea of calling it Toro Killer Little. Did Shiro realize the hero killer drink would sweep the continent like a tempest? The guild hall overflows with adventurers sprawled out, knocked out from drinking too much, and Nesca, her face flushed, claims she's never tasted anything so delicious. Keela announces she'd love to bring some home to her friends, while Liar, teary-eyed, asks if they truly drank all of Shiro's supply. Shiro admits it costs him a lot, but now every adventurer craves his brew, and Liar gazes at him, awestruck, calling him the legendary merchant. The young man remarks that if the night's chaos loosens some tension, he's pleased. Right then, two adventurers start brawling, but they're so sloshed they just collapse asleep in a heap. He notes it's especially helpful since Anna handles lots of guild deliveries, and Killa slaps Shiro's back, praising him as a solid guy. The young man grumbles that it stung, but the cat insists she barely tapped him, while Liar questions the true purpose of the evening. The warrior stares at a box and reveals that he notices fairy wings poking out from it. Shiro turns to her, asking if her friend showed up, and a gloomy Patty says no, he hasn't. The young man guesses he's probably not an adventurer then, and the fairy starts apologizing since Shiro went through all that for her. The young man and the warrior give her pitying looks. Days have gone by without any hint of Patty's friend. The young man showed the pendant around town, but nobody knew it, and though he put up posters, nothing came of it. Shiro suggests to the fairy that her friend might have left town, pointing out there are plenty of human cities beyond theirs. Patty wonders if that means about 20, but Anna, flinging her arms wide, says it's way more than that. Patty droops, overwhelmed by the number and unsure how she'll track her friend down, until Sankara bangs on the door, shouting for Shiro. The young man, startled to see the mayor, and Sankara, looking stern, announces she might have figured out who the man they're searching for is. She explains she's certain she's seen that pendant before, so she rummaged through her home and found something. Sankara opens a little box, pulling out a necklace with a pendant matching Patty's, which Shiro identifies right away. The mayor reveals it belonged to her great-great-grandfather, the first mayor of Minorik. Anna asks what a great-great-grandfather is, and Shiro explains it's your grandfather's grandfather. Sankara ponders why they're hunting for her great-great-grandfather, while the fairy cuts in, saying it's because she asked. The mayor's shocked to see a fairy and demands to know what's happening. The young man lays out the full tale, leaving Sankara stunned that her ancestor knew a fairy. Patty then asks where he is, and the mayor's confused by the question. The fairy clarifies that Sankara is the daughter of her friend's son's son, making them kin. Sankara agrees, and Patty presses on, insisting she must know his whereabouts, but Sankara just grows more puzzled. When Patty finally grasps her circumstances, she questions how long fairies usually live, and Patty tells her that her clan believes it's around 3,000 years, though she's only 300 herself. The mayor shares that humans consider it a blessing to reach 100, mentioning her great-great-grandfather died long ago. This surprises Patty, who recalls being shunned by all, unloved even by her parents, leading her to think no one would miss her as she disappeared. One night, under a full moon, she defied the rules and flew away from her territory until she met her friend, the first person to gaze at her with warmth and kindness. He was the first to thank her, smile at her, and share moments of play and battle with her. He even risked his life to shield her and gave her a pendant as a sign of their bond, marking the first time anyone had offered her such a treasure. She cherished the times they spent together, a friendless girl who suddenly found companionship. This friend became her closest companion, the first to bring her tears of happiness, though she hesitated to share her name when he asked, fearing it might ruin their connection. A quiet fear warned her that revealing it could end their friendship, so she always delayed, promising to tell him later. He never pushed her, simply saying he'd wait for the right moment. Now realizing he's gone, Patty reflects that his side was the only place she ever truly felt at home. Anna and Shiro watch her with pity and ask about her next steps or if she'll return to the fairies. Sadly, she admits she has no place to go, confessing she kept a secret. She was banished from her homeland. She raises her hand to reveal a mark on her side to reveal a mark branded on her stomach, which Shiro questions. She explains it's a symbol meaning walking disaster among fairies, admitting she often wished she'd never existed, especially since even her parents despised her. Despite this, she lived a somewhat ordinary life until rhinoceros beetles built a nest near the fairy territory. Hundreds of them began preying on the fairies for food, multiplying rapidly after settling in. The fairies couldn't escape until the food dwindled, and they soon pointed fingers at Patty. She grows angry, insisting they just made her a scapegoat and it wasn't her doing that the beetles came. But Patty confesses it was her fault after all. Because of a curse, the clan leader named her Patty Fulu, meaning the one who cuts through destiny in their tongue, hoping she'd defy her fate, yet he still cast her out. Patty wonders if that's not strange, and Shiro notes it's what led her to rescue him. She agrees, explaining she thought saving that foolish human might help her find her friend, only to realize she was the real fool. Anna looks at her with compassion. Tears well up in Anna's eyes as Patty softly pats her head, asking her not to cry since it would make her cry too, and they hug, sobbing together. Shiro steps closer and asks if he can pose a question, wondering if Patty wants to save the fairies. She quickly says yes, and when he asks if she still feels that way despite her exile, she lowers her head and says she owes the leader for her name, and her parents, though they hated her, are still there. They're still her family, so naturally she wants to aid them, and Shiro, leaning close, suggests they go save them. Patty asks if he's serious, and with a smile, he assures her he is. She begs him to rescue the fairies, and Anna chimes in, urging Shiro to assist. He promises they'll succeed and says they'll start by heading to the Adventurers Guild, where, upon arrival, adventurers murmur among themselves about Shiro. A young man asks the guild master to defeat a group of rhinoceros beetles, and she admits she understands his plea but hesitates to take it on, believing it's completely impossible. Shiro is captured, while Anna and Patty stand behind him, looking crushed. The guild master goes on to say that wiping out a rhinoceros beetle nest is a huge task, requiring at least half the guild's adventurers to join the effort. The young man grows anxious about how much it would cost to hire so many people, but she explains that money isn't the only issue they're facing. They lack something else too. The guild master reveals they don't have enough sway to pull it off since most adventurers are busy exploring ruins in the forest. If the nests were closer to the city, they might assist, but the far-off fairy territory makes it tough to gather them. She says sorry for being unable to help and turns to leave for other duties. Shiro, unwilling to give up, calls out to stop her. The young man offers a new idea, suggesting they treat it as a deal instead of a formal job. Nei looks puzzled by his words, so he asks her to hear him out. He grabs her focus and uses his inventory ability, opening a portal right before her eyes. Nei is stunned by what she sees, and Shiro explains that this is his special skill. He shares his plan. When the adventurers reach the ruins, he'll use his ability to move items like armor, making their work faster. Even if his beetle problem takes days, they won't waste time exploring. He then asks the guild master for her opinion. Nei admits it's an appealing suggestion, getting the young man a spark of hope. His optimism fades when she reveals she has her own enchanted item with a similar inventory ability, showing she can open one too. Shiro is floored, and Nei says hers can hold as much as 3 wagons. Anna feels bad for him, and Nei apologizes once more for turning down his request. Just then, Elo steps in, asking what's happening. Elo wonders if the young man is in a bind, and Shiro checks if he's being too noisy, saying sorry after. He stresses how badly he needs to get rid of the forest rhinoceros beetles. Elo, a dwarf, pauses to think before saying he didn't mean to add more. Shiro, confused, asks if he's serious about helping and why he'd offer. The dwarf reminds him of a bet they had, and the young man recalls it, though Eldest grumbles that he'd truly forgotten. Shiro questions if he's for real since Nei just called it a massive job. The dwarf sharpens his axe, muttering not to lump him with weaklings, claiming he can tackle the beetles solo without effort. Liar suddenly pops up, saying he overheard it all, and the Azure Flash group volunteers to join too. Nei cuts in, waving her sword in frustration, stating that guild rules forbid taking unapproved requests, and off-the-books work would face consequences. But Oz interrupts, saying she got it wrong. Liar agrees with the dwarf, explaining Elo lost a bet, so aiding Shiro is his way of settling it. Killa teases that the dwarf had fallen flat in a big scene during that bet. Oz tells her to hush, while Liar adds that his group are Shiro's pals and will help for free. Sorceress Nesca chimes in, pointing out that since they're not seeking pay, it's not an official job. Killa hugs Shiro, saying they'd obviously step up for their friends in need. The young man is touched by their support, thanking them and vowing that once the beetles are gone, they'll celebrate together. Some passing adventurers overhear and ask if helping means more of Shiro's drinks. The young man says it depends, noting he found a bottle of rare fairy mead while sorting his stock. The adventurers marvel that he owns such a legendary drink and eagerly sign up, with others jumping in too. Nei, glancing around nervously, insists she can't allow it since everyone should focus on the ruins, pointing at the young man as she speaks. She wonders what evidence he had to show he owned the item, but Patty steps in from inside Anna's backpack, showing herself and confirming that he did have it because she crafted it herself. Shiro asks why the chief had left her hiding spot, and Nei is surprised to see the fairy, asking the young man what was going on. The young man lets out a sigh and explains that Patty is his boss, and in truth, she was the one who wanted to eliminate the rhinoceros beetles. The fairy only desired one thing that could rescue the rest of her kind, but he couldn't do it alone. He was just a traitor and couldn't take on dangerous creatures by himself, so with resolve, he kneels before the guild master, begging Nei to save the fairies, tears welling up in his eyes. She kneels with him, pleading for help to save Patty's family. The fairy promises that if they defeat the beetles, she'll create something special for everyone and urges Nei to assist the fairies. Nei feels stuck in a tough spot and grumbles that Shiro had been harsh, making her seem like the bad guy. The guild master then gives the order. She instructs all bronze-level adventurers to gear up for combat, as they were going to wipe out the rhinoceros beetle nest. She tells everyone to follow her to the G Forest, and the adventurers head out with purpose. They travel for a while until Patty announces they've reached the spot. Shiro is stunned when the fairy points to a dungeon entrance and explains that the nest is inside. Patty shares that the monsters there trap the fairies, preventing their escape. Some fairies appear at the cave's opening, hungry but too scared to step out. She turns to Nay and asks if he's certain this was the ancient magical civilization's ruins that the guild had been seeking. The fairy replies that the odd cave had always existed, and her clan's leader said it was built by a civilization long ago. Nay can hardly believe what she sees, feeling like dreams might actually come true. She then pulls out a map and lays out her strategy, directing them to split into 3 groups based on rank, focusing on keeping everyone safe. The 6 mythal-ranked adventurers would start with a sudden strike, going into the ruins. The 17 gold-level adventurers would take out any monsters coming out of the entrance. The 15 silver-level adventurers would handle any that slipped past. She keeps getting orders to Oz, saying that as a platinum-ranked adventurer, he should stay back for emergencies, but Shiru cautions that he's going into the nest solo as the dwarf abruptly dashes off shouting. Nay's eyes widen in disbelief, and right after, the other adventurers copy him, leaving Nay angry. While she swears at those reckless adventurers, she tells the Azure Flash to stay and guard Shiru and Patty, and the group promises they'll manage it. Nay then shifts the plan, directing everyone to follow Elo into the nest with excitement, telling them to draw the monsters out of the ruins. The adventurers fight a tough battle against the creatures. Meanwhile, Shiru looks at his watch, seeing 2 hours have passed since they went in, hoping all are okay. Suddenly, Nay shows up, and the young man hurries to her, asking how the mission is going, but Oz laughs loudly, asking what Shiru thinks of him, with his reliable axe slung over his back. The dwarf brags that he didn't even get tired. Nay backs him up, saying he took down nearly all the beels single-handedly. The guild master says she witnessed it herself and guarantees no monsters remain alive. Shiru is speechless, unable to fathom that Oz defeated hundreds of monsters alone. Nay agrees it's unbelievable. The young man wonders if the monsters had a queen bee as a final challenge, but the dwarf says he doesn't know, and if there was one, he probably smashed it with the rest. He then looks at Nay, saying he's hungry and asking if they brought meat and drinks. Shiru goes back to Patty and says this is great news. The fairy hesitates but agrees, and the young man asks if she wants to tell the other fairies. Just as she starts to answer, Patty hears a cry for help. She asks if Shiru heard it too, but he's unsure what she means. She suddenly understands something and takes off, an alarm sounding as she explains she must leave. The young man Shiru grows anxious about her and chases after her. Lyre questions where he's headed, but then hears strange sounds. A tiny fairy zooms in, pleading for assistance in distress. The little fairy gets snatched by a monster's talons just as Patty shows up, ready to fight the beast. She pauses, worried her magic might harm the captured fairy. Instead, Patty strikes the monster directly, demanding it let the small fairy go, but the beetle knocks her back with force. Shiru hurries over, concerned, while Kila jumps onto the monster, claiming she knows its vulnerability. She stabs the insect with her blade, freeing the little fairy who tumbles down. At that instant, Nesca casts an ice spear spell to hit the monster. Patty swoops in to catch the falling fairy, checking if she's unharmed. Shiru expresses gratitude to the sorceress and the scout for their aid. But then, Lyre scans the area for them, asking if they're okay, as he and Ralph were under attack by more monsters. The warrior points out that situation is dire. The place is overrun with insects pouring endlessly from the nest, trapping the group. Nay is stunned, having just watched the dwarf defeat them all moments ago. An adventurer steps forward, revealing he discovered a hidden exit at the nest's rear, previously concealed by monster remains. Nay insists he's kidding and blames herself for this oversight as guild master. Patty warns that the fairy's safety is at risk if they don't act. Shiru checks with her about using her earlier magic. Lyre grumbles that the foes never stop coming, and noticing the young man with Patty, asks what he's up to. Shiru confirms with the fairy if she's prepared, since they need to strike together. She agrees she's ready. The young man grips his makeshift flamethrower alongside Patty, and they unleash a huge fiery burst. The monsters collapse, burn to ashes, and the pair marvel at how well their tactic worked, maybe too well, though they aim skyward. Lyre wonders aloud if the young man is secretly a skilled mage. Nesca cuts in, pointing out a massive monster emerging in the sky with jagged, fearsome teeth. Lyre is stunned, and Nesca declares it must be the queen. Kila, alarmed, notes its enormous size. Shiru asks Patty if she can use that spell again. The fairy assures him she can and will take down this pest with ease. Ralph shouts a warning as the queen beetle lunges with its giant jaws. Shiru and Patty waver, but then Oz steps up, unleashing his Thunder of Justice attack, hitting the beast with electric jolts. The injured queen begins to plummet, and the dwarf apologizes for the delay. Shiru thanks Eldos, who brushes it off, saying he was just settling a score. It had been ages since the dwarf last used his full strength with his reliable axe, Seal, a gift from the immortal witch. Curious about Eldos's tale, Shiro asks if justice is carved into the axe. Eldos confirms it is, adding that Seal lets him wield justice magic twice daily. The young man recalls something about his past. He remembers his grandmother loved an action show called Real Justice, featuring Steven Seagal. Eldos, surprised, asks how the young man knows this, and Shiro spills the whole story. The dwarf wonders if he's Alice Goo's grandson, noting a slight resemblance. A voice calls out to Patty, asking what's happening. She turns to see the clan leader as several fairies step out from the trees. Lara is amazed by how many there are, and Nesca finds them charming. The clan leader, in a deep tone, speaks up. He questions why Patty is there, given her exile, and why humans are battling the beetles. Angry, Patty retorts that he shouldn't care since he banished her, so she owes him no explanation. Shiro steps forward, introducing himself to the leader, explaining that Patty saved his life and enlisted him to defeat the monsters and protect the fairies. The elder asks if Patty came back to rescue them, pointing out the irony of the cursed one being their savior. Nesca jumps in with a question of her own. Patty shows the sorceress a birthmark on her belly, explaining that a fairy born with it brings disaster to their people. The sorceress, amazed, recognizes it as a seal, and Nesca tells the guild sorceress that this symbol marked those gifted with strong magic. Patty shares that long ago, many with the seal suffered because their powers grew wild and consumed them, but that was far in the past. They found that anyone could learn magic with basic skills, and now most with such power become top sorceress. Some tribes and races still fear and misunderstand the seal, but it's really a blessing from the gods. The elder of the tribe is stunned, as this shows their legend was false, and Nesca offers to teach Patty magic from her academy days. Patty is touched, and the sorceress says mastering her powers could let her aid the fairies alone next time. The clan leader, her grandfather, says sorry for her past pain, ashamed as her leader and kin. The elder kneels in regret, but Patty stops him, saying his exile led her to meet Shiro and save all, surprising the fairy. She tells the ashamed fairies they did no wrong, and later at Shiro's shop, he asks if Patty will go back to the fairy kingdom as her grandfather wants. Patty says yes, and Anna cries, not wanting to part with her. Patty notes humans live short lives, so staying would leave her alone again someday. She came only to find Shiro, who understands, and she thanks them all for their help. Suddenly, Sankara runs in with a letter from her great-great-grandfather's things, addressed to Patty's friend. Patty asks her to read it. Her friend calls her his best pal, noting years passed since their promise to meet again. Seasons changed and time flew, and he says she teased his now thinner arms. He can hardly walk, not run, but dreams of their forest dashes, moving Patty as she reads on. He met an elf who said fairies live longer than humans and translated her name. The one who cuts through fate, she learns. He thought her name, Fulu, was lovely, saying it as he wrote, then shares his name, Sankara, thanking Patty for being in his life. Anna holds her ancestor's letter, saying Patty meant so much to her great-great-grandfather emotionally. Patty recalls he was Sankara, her only friend, who learned her name, loved someone, and had kids and great-grandkids, she says. With tears in her eyes, Patty expresses her joy that Sankara lived a life filled with happiness. Shiro explains to her that while humans may have short lives, time doesn't matter when it comes to friendship. The young man tells Patty that Sankara will always remain her friend in her heart, no matter what, and wipes away her tears. The fairy agrees with him, and even Sankara feels touched by the moment. The young man then asks the fairy to keep him and Anna in her heart too, even if only in a small part of it. The young man pulls a photo from his pocket, showing him, Anna, and Patty smiling and making peace signs. He says that everyone in the picture is his friend, his very best friends, in fact. Patty gets emotional, and Anna, crying, agrees, saying she and the fairy are partners. The adventurers of Azure Flash show up, and Lyre smiles too, noting that they're all friends. The croakful meows, pointing out how fortunate they are to befriend the fairy. Nesca walks over with a serious look and tells Patty she understands her completely. Nesca shares that, as a half-elf, she'll outlive humans by a long time, but she still loves Lyre without fear. Lyre gazes at her as the sorceress adds that every second with him will stay in her heart forever. Nesca asks the fairy what she plans to do, and Patty, with resolve, says she fears nothing and will stick with them. After all, the clan leader never set a return date, plus Nesca offered to teach her magic, and Patty couldn't leave anyway. Patty calls Anna a crybaby, saying she can't abandon her, and notes that time works differently for them. She'll only go back to her kingdom when Shiro dies of old age. The young man chuckles nervously, saying he's not that old yet. Anna, teary-eyed, hugs Patty, who jumps and grumbles about the sudden embrace. 2 months fly by, and the harvest festival arrives. The city is alive with decorations and excitement, as Shiro had promised the mayor he'd help out. Shiro assigns Anna to snap pictures of the townsfolk while he and Sankara handle an auction. The young man eagerly presents a bottle of Spirus, dubbed a hero-killing drink, calling out bids as the crowd fights over each item. Shiro reveals the final piece, a drink so tasty only those blessed by a fairy can savor it. He holds up a bottle of mead and boasts that Patty, now the city's tourism star, crafted it herself. The fairy looks shy as Shiro calls for a loud cheer for her. The auction kicks off at 1 gold coin, and the young man pushes the bids higher. After it ends, Sankara and Shiro relax on a plaza bench. The young man brags about the auction's success and laughs about the mayor's goofy face when the mead's sold. Sankara argues that anyone would react like that to such a haul. He got 50 gold coins for the drink. Shiro grins, saying it'll boost the city's funds. The mayor thanks Shiro, crediting him for making it all happen. The young man, embarrassed, says he just had the idea. Patty did the real work, so Sankara should thank her. The mayor nods, and Patty walks up, seeing them chat. The fairy mentions she just thought of something and asks a casual question. She wonders if Shiro and Sankara could have a baby. Shiro stumbles over his words, flustered, while Sankara's face turns bright red. Sankara blurts out that they're not even together. The fairy says Stella told her about reincarnation, suggesting a baby might bring your friend back. Shiro, now more awkward, explains that humans have ceremonies before making babies. Sankara, flustered, backs him up, saying there are steps and challenges first. Patty cuts them off, shouting for silence, and snaps at Shiro, asking if he's saying no, her tone sharp and demanding. The young man jokingly suggests making a baby on the spot, but then claims it's an abuse of power. Just then, Stella and Anna show up, and the little girl wonders if the auction has ended. Shiro confirms it has and asks about the photos she took. She excitedly says she'd love a group picture with everyone, and he agrees it's a wonderful plan. The city had no streetlights, but that night, lanterns cast a gentle glow over everything. Norwich was the city Sankara had created from nothing, and Shiro was part of it. As Shiro gets everyone ready for the photo, a woman calls his name. He turns and asks who she is, but she questions if he doesn't know her. Her face is hard to see in the dim light, and the young man admits he can't place her, asking where they might have met. She steps forward into the light and calls Shiro a fool, revealing she's his grandmother. Shiro suddenly remembers her and how he'd been so sure she was still alive and would attend the festival. Even after becoming a merchant, finding his grandmother had always been Shiro's biggest hope. He only found out 2 months ago from Sankara that the witch had been at last year's harvest festival. Back then, he'd been fighting insect monsters on a mission with Azure Flash and had met Patty Fulu, a moment that meant a lot to him. So much had happened since then, and before he realized it, the harvest festival was here again, and he was enjoying it with his friends. Right then, she appeared, surprising Shiro. He asks what she just said, and she insists she's his grandmother. Anna asks Shiro who this woman is, and she repeats that she's his grandmother. The little girl points out she looks too young for that role, and the woman agrees with a smile, stepping closer to Shiro with a peace sign. Anna is asked if she sees the family likeness, but Shiro, stunned by the peace sign, steps back and declares she can't be his grandmother, upset by the idea. Shiro explains that his real grandmother was over 80, a frail old woman, not some youthful, fancy girl. It couldn't possibly be her. Sankara shyly walks up, calling out to Arisu, and the witch greets her, asking how she's been. The young man is amazed as the mayor praises the witch, saying the festival's success was all thanks to Shiro's help. Arisu watches quietly and notes that her Shiro had supported the witch well, saying he'd grown into a fine man and that bringing him to festivals as a kid had paid off. Shiro questions if she's truly his grandmother, and she keeps saying she is. He tests her by asking her favorite movie, and Arisu answers it's Lethal Weapon. He presses further, asking for her second favorite, and Arisu says it could be Braveheart, but she'll pick Mad Max. Shiro asks about her favorite actor, and she confidently says Mel Gibson. Arisu sighs, calling him overly careful and saying it hurts her feelings, then asks if he recalls a time when he was 7 years old. She reminds him of wetting his pants on the way home and how she had to change him. Shiro says she didn't need to mention that and asks where she'd been all this time and why she left without a word. Arisu gazes at him softly, says sorry, and asks him not to be upset. Patty steps in, worried, asking who this person is, sensing a strong mana from her. Sankara beams and says she'll introduce the living legend, the immortal witch Arisu, as people nearby start to gather. Everyone wants to speak with the witch, and Arisu teases the mayor for being too loud. Sankara says sorry, but the witch comforts her, saying she's used to it by now. Still, she won't be able to enjoy the festival anymore. Suddenly, a magic circle appears, and a sword rises from it. Someone shouts that it must be the legendary sword Mel Gibson. Arisu apologizes, explaining this was her reunion with her grandson, then swings the sword, wishing everyone sweet dreams as they fall asleep. Shiro asks what she's doing. The witch comforts the young man, telling him that what he saw was only a trick of the mind, then steps closer and wraps her arms around him. He resists, pulling back and questioning her actions, but Arisu insists they must hurry and leave. Shiro is confused and asks her to explain, to which the witch replies that it's clear enough as she opens a glowing portal. Arisu tugs him toward it, promising they're heading back to his home. The portal leads them to Shir's world, and as they tumble through the sky, he cries out in anguish. Just before they smash into the roof of the house, Arisu intervenes. With a wave of her magic, Arisu guides them safely through the building. Landing on the ground floor, Shiro reels from the drop, overwhelmed, while Arisu stretches her arms, delighted to be back home. The young man pours a cup of tea, which Arisu sips as she recalls how playful he was as a child, though now he serves her with a grumpy look. He snaps back that he's 25 now, not a kid anymore. The witch notes he seems eager to speak his mind, and Shiro agrees, saying he has plenty of questions, starting with the most pressing one. He demands to know who she really is, while Arisu, pouting, reminds him she already said she's a witch and wonders if that's not sufficient. The young man insists it clarifies nothing and urges her to act her age. Shiro mentions the chaos her absence caused in the family and asks why she vanished without a word, but Arisu brushes it off, saying witches have their own reasons she can't share. He grumbles that dodging the question like that isn't right, and then asks if she uses magic to appear youthful. She denies it, explaining that her current youthful look is her true self, leaving Shiro stunned. Arisu reveals that her aged appearance was a magical disguise, crafted because people in that world would question her not growing old. She invites Shiro to watch closely, then shifts into an elderly form before his eyes. The young man stares in disbelief as the girl becomes a wrinkled old woman. The witch teases, asking if he's pleased to see the grandmother he remembers, but Shiro insists he's not. He's just shaken. He admits it's a lot to process, almost too much, and Arisu shares that Shir's grandfather once asked her to stay young forever for him, showering her with compliments like cute and beautiful. She adds that they'd share passionate nights, faces flushed and close together, until Shiro cuts her off, begging her to spare him the details about his grandparents. Arisu chuckles and asks if he has more questions. The young man then points her to the portal hidden in the closet. Arisu recounts how, long ago, she and her husband were struggling financially after pouring all their money into building the house, leaving no funds for travel or getaways. She came up with the idea to turn an unused room into a portal linking their world to Rufaro. Together, they enjoyed countless adventures, making the most of their magical escape.